subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
Strong. But after all, his opponent Shujboy is one of the top combat forces in Edolas, and the soldiers under his command all possess top-notch magic equipment. It is inevitable to worry about Mo Bai. Can you really beat it? Chapter 80, The Jailer. Perhaps because he was still unclear about Mo Bai's strength, Shujboy was much more cautious at the moment and did not step forward alone again. Instead, he stood where he was and thrust his sword into the ground. Sword of Rose, softening. As the crystal green gems on the sword shone brightly, streamlined ripples were produced along the sword body, flowing into the earth and flowing towards the feet of Mo Bai and Lisana. Careful, Lisana shouted loudly, but still took a step slower. As soon as the magic ripples reached the two of them, they spread, and the originally hard ground under their feet became twisted and soft. Like a quagmire that gets deeper and deeper the more they struggle, the madness draws their bodies inwards. In the blink of an eye, the entire ankle was swallowed up by the soil. Oops! Lisana glanced at Mo Bai guiltily. Seeing Mo Bai deflated, Shujboy also showed a proud look on his face. It seemed like it was just his bluff. Shujboy raised his chin and said in an arrogant tone, "In the name of the royal army, I give you one last chance to surrender. Otherwise, the earth dragons crack." Shujboy's words were immediately interrupted by Mo Bai. Looking around in horror, he discovered that the ground beneath the two people's feet had already had fine cracks in the shape of spider webs at some point. It seems that as long as you touch it lightly, it will immediately fall apart. Bang! The next moment, the strong magic power in Mo Bai's body broke out again, even stronger than when he first arrived here, and his feet suddenly exerted force. The dry and cracked soil suddenly exploded, revealing several ugly scars of black holes in all directions. Ah! Before the soldiers had time to activate the magic power of the weapons in their hands, they fell into it one by one along with their sophisticated equipment. Shujboy's body was in a semi-crouching position, holding the hilt of the rose sword tightly with both hands, trying to resist the impact, and he couldn't help being shocked. He actually used such powerful magic without any magic items? Could it be that he is from a slant? Only then did Shujboy suddenly wake up. He looked up at Mo Bai again, but Mo Bai still looked calm and composed. As a ray of light flashed in his pupils, the magic power of the earth dragon suddenly became more powerful, and the cracks in the earth spread crazily again. Shujboy watched helplessly as the surrounding ground continued to shatter, and his body was riddled with holes. He hurriedly wanted to pull out the sword blade and escape from this place. But it was only then that he discovered with horror. The rose sword that I was proud of had already been shattered by Mo Bai's magic power in the impact just now. Only scattered fragments were left on the ground. How is that possible? For the magicians of Edolas, magic items must be used as carriers to release magic. The destruction of weapons means that they have lost their combat effectiveness and become muggles. A look of endless horror suddenly appeared on Shujboy's face. Completely losing his fighting spirit, his body collapsed weakly and fell into the crack in the earth beside him. Seeing this, Mo Bai slowly gathered the magical energy in his body and took a long breath. Everything returned to calm. Looking at Lisana, who was still in shock next to him, Mo Bai stepped forward and asked softly, "Is the injury serious?" Lisana was startled when she heard this, then shook her head and said, No, it's just some simple trauma. It has no impact. Thank you for saving me." Mo Bai glanced down from the corner of his eye and realized that she had been barefoot, affected by the muddy land just now. Lisana's originally smooth and tender feet were also stained with a lot of wet brown soil, making them white and pink. "By the way, I just happen to be a little hungry. Besides, I am an earth attribute dragon slayer, so it makes sense to eat some earth to replenish my magic power, right?" Ahem. Mo Bai coughed twice and joked casually. "Why did you lose your shoes?" Lisana looked down and immediately blushed, subconsciously avoiding Mo Bai's gaze to avoid looking at each other. Mo Bai stuck out his tongue and changed the subject. "Well, I'll take you back to the guild. It just so happens that I have something to go to Fairy Tale. This? Lysana hesitated. The kingdom of Edolas has already ordered the forcible dissolution of all magician guilds. Although after several years, everyone in Fairy Tale struggled to support it and remained the only surviving guild in the kingdom. However, he was also frantically wanted and hunted by the royal army. Guild addresses are also moving more and more frequently. For every Fairy Tale member, the specific location of the guild is absolutely confidential. Once leaked, it will easily bring disaster to all members. Thinking of this, Lysana shook her head firmly. I'm sorry, even though you saved me, but I still can't take you to the guild. Lysana's big watery eyes are particularly cute when she becomes stubborn. As expected of Mirajane's sister, both sisters have their own beauty. Shaonizi has a strong sense of prevention. Mo Bai smiled brightly and immediately guessed her difficulty, but he didn't feel too embarrassed. He just casually opened a corner of his upper body and exposed his chest. Lysana instantly blushed from her neck to her ears and subconsciously moved her gaze to the side. What do you want to do? Mo Bai looked innocent. Don't be so sensitive, right? I'm not a gangster. Why don't you turn around and take a look? Hearing this, Lysana turned her head slowly and hesitantly and saw the familiar pattern on Mo Bai's chest at a glance. Under the warm sunshine, the Fairy Tale coat of arms shines brightly. Lysana immediately covered her pink lips with her hands, her eyes showing surprise, and looked at Mo Bai again. You are? My name is Mo Bai, and I am the new member of Fairy Tale. After a while, Lysana recovered from the shock. Brother Mo Bai, although you have a coat of arms, why don't I remember seeing you in the guild? Well, Mo Bai couldn't help but smile bitterly. By the way, Lysana had been transported to the world of Edolas by anima for several years since the day she traveled through time. It's normal to have never seen myself. Mo Bai replied in a deep voice. The guild I joined is a Slant's Fairy Tale. A Slant's Fairy Tale? Lysana silently recited the name, her brows showing a bit of sadness. It seems to be reminiscent of some long-lost past events. It wasn't until Mo Bai's call came to her ears that she was brought back to reality. Lysana. What's wrong? Can we go back to the guild together now? Of course. Mo Bai smiled faintly, gently holding Lysana's slender wrist. The wings of the storm dragon gradually appeared behind her, leaping quickly and stopping in midair. I looked at the markings on the map. If you go through this grassland, you'll find the guild, right? Lysana shook her head. That was the previous address. The guild has now moved to the southern desert in the opposite direction. Mo Bai said helplessly. Okay, you guys are hiding pretty well. There is nothing we can do. The royal army has been looking for him. Everyone is very distressed as he keeps moving here and there. Chapter 81 Fairy Tale Guild of Edolas. Return from the desert. Go through the previous mine. Not far away, Mo Bai saw a huge tree house standing in the distance, which was incompatible with the surrounding desolation. The sense of security in Lysana's heart instantly became stronger, and she whispered, "It's right in front." Good. As the height continued to decrease, the two of them stood firmly on the ground, and Mo Bai folded his wings and stood in front of the treehouse. So it's so close? It's such a polar opposite. Before Lysana could step forward and push the door open, Mo Bai faintly heard crying and scolding coming from inside. I suddenly had a bad feeling. Crunch, as the door was pushed open. What you see is chaos. The 7-foot-tall man sitting in the center of the hall is none other than Elfman. But he is no longer as rugged and bold as he was in the impression. He keeps shouting Man Triple X all day long. Instead, he kept wiping his tears and nose with his arms and cried nonstop. It's all my fault. Lysana shouldn't have been allowed to go out alone. I'm sorry. You. Although Mo Bai was mentally prepared. But when I saw this scene with my own eyes, I was still a little dumbfounded. It's so noisy. Lucy, the strange orangutan girl. Can you be quiet? Go and repair your machine, and don't worry about things you shouldn't. You're a skinny mechanical geek. Lucy and Levy, who were originally good friends in a slant, were now like Naz Gray in the past. They started arguing nonstop when they met, and almost got into a fight. Especially for Lucy, the character change has been extremely dramatic. In Aslant, she was still a kind and lovely rich daughter. But in Edolas, she turned into a bad and violent woman who always speaks with her fists. Suddenly, a sweet male voice came from in front of the bulletin board. Mo Bai looked closely and realized it was Gray. Jivia-chan, do you want me to accompany you to find Lysana Duck? However, Gray from Edolas is not the stripping pervert. Quite the opposite. At this time, Gray was wrapped in countless pieces of cotton clothes. His whole body was like a huge meatball, and he also had a bright red scarf tied around his neck. But what shocked Mo Bai Bungbu the most was the next scene. Gray slowly squirmed to Juvia's side, with a flattering look on his eyebrows. Jivia-chan, just let me go with you. Juvia, however, looked disgusted and said, go away. You wear so many clothes and you feel so cold when I see you. Stay away from me. I'll go find Lysana myself. Gray smiled innocently. It would be more comfortable if you were more clothes. Mo Bai sighed softly and couldn't help but sigh. It's really Gongtian's turn, even if you know the plot in advance. But after all, seeing is worth hearing 100 times. Mo Bai watched it with gusto. Although many characters are misplaced, the noisy atmosphere has not changed at all. Still the familiar fairy tale. Lysana. In the chaos, someone suddenly shouted. Immediately afterwards, almost everyone in the hall stopped what they were doing and turned their attention to the door, focusing on Mo Bai and Lysana. Elfman's eyes were filled with excitement and disbelief, and his words became hesitant. Lysana, you're back. Lysana walked forward with a wry smile, casually pulled out a tissue on the table and handed it over. Don't cry, brother. Although I was chased by the royal army, luckily I met brother Mo Bai, and I was able to escape. Seeing that Lysana had indeed returned safely, the guild members temporarily stopped arguing and gathered together with smiles on their faces. It'll be good to come back. It'll be good to come back. Speaking of which, this little brother is a bit unfamiliar. Was he the one who saved you? He's quite handsome, isn't he? Much better than that Gray, who has been pestering me all day long. You Jivia-chan, if you say that, I will be sad. _ More and more pairs of curious eyes looked over, facing this group of familiar and yet unfamiliar companions. Mo Bai didn't show any concern. He simply lifted up his clothes, displayed his guild crest openly, and said, to put it simply, I am a person from another parallel world, Aslant. In my world, there is also a magician's guild called Fairy Tale. I know this sounds ridiculous, but it's true. There was suddenly no sound in the crowd. All members looked at Mo Bai blankly. After a few seconds of silence, Kana suddenly stretched out his arm from the back row and asked loudly, since there is fairy tale in your world, is there another me? Mo Bai immediately affirmed, yes, you are Kana. In Aslant, you are a female drunkard who often makes troubles to drink me. Kana couldn't help but smile bitterly. Really, that's quite interesting. Mo Bai looked up and down at Kana in front of him again. A white dress wraps her body tightly, and her behavior is full of elegance, just like a well-behaved girl next door. It can be said that he is completely different from the female alcoholic I knew before. After hearing Mo Bai's answer, others immediately became interested. And me. Hey, I must be happily together with Jivia-chan in Aslant, right? Actually, I also want to know what I look like in parallel time and space. Facing the enthusiastic crowd, Mo Bai was overwhelmed and had to reply one by one while recalling. Elfman, when you were in Aslant, you were a man who fought with others every day. If you didn't fight for a day, you would feel uncomfortable. Gray, you are a pervert over there who takes off his clothes when he gets excited. No matter how hard you try to persuade him, you can't persuade him. Don't laugh at Juvia. I remember that you were crazy about this stripper in Aslant. Why are Lucy and Levy quarreling again? In my mind, you two are best friends. Jet and Troy are simply epic enhancements. They used to be walk-ons, but now they are version T0. Alzak and Biska are pretty much the same as over there. They're still a passionate couple. There's no change in Myra's words, the same gentleness and the same good figure. And just when Mo Bai answered one by one, Lysana's figure quietly left and walked into the back hall. Although the movement was very light, it was still noticed by Mo Bai. What is this girl thinking? Chapter 82, As Long as the Mind Does Not Slip. There are always more solutions than difficulties. It didn't take long. Mo Bai found an excuse to get away, walked through the noisy crowd, and walked towards the back hall. Since it is just a tree house, the back hall is not very big, and there are only a few rooms left through the corridor. It is much smaller than a slant's fairy tale headquarters. Mo Bai called softly, "Lisana? Are you here?" After a few seconds, Lisana's panicked response came from the room on the right. Wait for me a moment. A long while. As the door creaked open, Lisana leaned out of the room and forced a smile towards Mo Bai. "Brother Mo Bai? What's the matter?" Mo Bai did not answer directly. He found that Lisana's eyes were red and even stained with tears. Sensing Mo Bai's strange gaze, Lisana immediately pretended to be sleepy, yawned and said, "I'm so tired from running all the way. I just wanted to rest." "Really? I originally wanted to go in and sit for a while." Mo Bai smiled and turned around, pretending to leave. Lisana bit her red lips lightly, hesitated for a moment, and then took Mo Bai's arm that was about to leave. "Come in and stay for a while." Lisana's room is very simple, not even many of the little girl's favorite decorations. It can be seen that due to the constant pursuit by the royal army, the members of Fairy Tale usually live in a tight life. Sitting on a low wooden chair, holding the hot tea that Lisana had just poured for him in his hand, Mo Bai suddenly said, "Are you homesick?" Panic flashed through Lisana's beautiful eyes, and she subconsciously took a half step back, pretending to be calm, and said, "I don't understand what you mean. This place, Fairy Tale, is my home." "No, I mean a slant's fairy tale. That's your original home." There was unquestionable firmness in Mo Bai's tone. The words immediately caused Lisana to freeze in place, with tears welling up in her eyes. Seeing Lisana's aggrieved look, Mo Bai sighed briefly, stepped forward and gently put his hand on her shoulder, whispering, "Lisana, you are not from this world, but from a slant like me, right?" Going back a few years, Lisana of Edolas died during a mission. At that time, the three Mirajane sisters in a slant went out to carry out a commission. Elfman forcibly accepted the soul of the beast, lost his mind, and attacked his sister Lisana in a rage. When Lisana was seriously injured, she just happened to catch up with the operation of the anima device, so she was taken to Edolas. The Fairy Tale Guild entered this world by accident, replacing the deceased Edolas Lisana. Mirajane and Elfman of Edolas were naturally overjoyed by their sister's resurrection from the dead. But far away in a slant, everyone was immersed in the pain of losing Lisana. Now, Lisana finally couldn't restrain her inner emotions. Tears burst out of her eyes, her delicate body trembled, and she cried loudly on Mo Bai's shoulder. Over the years, she has also suffered from missing her homeland of a slant all the time. The grievances that had been accumulated for a long time finally broke out. "Sister Mira, Brother Elfman, Natsu, everyone in the guild, are you all okay?" Mo Bai raised his fingers, gently wiped away the tears on Lisana's cheek, and comforted her softly like he was treating his own sister. "Everything is fine in the guild. It's just that it's missing a little girl named Lisana. Mira often mentioned her to me and said she was very cute." Sister Mira, seeing that Lisana was getting emotional again, Mo Bai quickly revealed his intention. Actually, one of the purposes of my trip to Edolas this time is to take you away with me. Don't be too sad. I'll be able to go back soon." After Lisana heard this, she slowly calmed down, paused for a moment, and then said hesitantly, "I can't go back yet." And her answer was within Mo Bai's expectation. Mo Bai immediately asked, "Are you reluctant to leave the guild here?" After half a minute of mental struggle, Lisana suddenly seemed to have made some kind of determination, wiped away her tears, and said firmly, "Well, everyone in Edolas is also very kind to me, especially Sister Mira and Brother Elfman. I can't make them sad anymore." Apparently, Lisana also considers the Fairy Tale Guild in Edolas her home. Once following Mo Bai return to Aslant. This means that Mirajane and Elfman here will have to endure the pain of permanent separation. Mo Bai couldn't help but smile bitterly and said, "Oh, silly girl. Who told you that as long as you go back, You will never be able to come here again." Lysana suddenly raised her head, her crystal eyes showing unexpected joy. "You mean, even if I return to Aslant, I can occasionally go back to Edolas to visit Sister Mira?" And Mo Bai nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Of course, it's just about the method of traveling between the two worlds. It involves some knowledge about teleportation magic. I still need to study it further." Recalling the scene when I first arrived in Edolas, I borrowed the teleportation magic from Mr. Gin. And Mo Bai thought, since he agreed to come here to help Miss Gang solve the anima problem. In return, he taught himself teleportation magic. Isn't that too much? To put it bluntly, the magic item industry is quite developed now. Some TP scrolls are still for sale, right? It doesn't mean that if you leave Edolas, you will never be able to come back. Thinking of this, Mo Bai said half-jokingly, "What is the saying? As long as the mind does not slip, there are always more solutions than difficulties." Lysana let out a thump and finally broke through her tears into a smile. "Thank you, Brother Mo Bai." This time my brother shouted. This made Mo Bai feel a little shaken, just when Lysana agreed to return to Aslant with her. Before Mo Bai could breathe a sigh of relief, he immediately smelled a hint of danger. "Wait! There seems to be movement outside the guild." Lysana was stunned. "What's going on? Is it someone from the royal army again?" "I'm afraid there's more than one person here." Mo Bai stood up slowly, opened the door, and walked towards the hall. Lysana quickly followed. Chapter 83, Dilemma. Wanted by the royal army. Fairy tale front room. The anxious people have already become a mess, full of quarrels and anxiety. Just a minute ago, Natsu from Edolas had just returned to the guild after completing his investigation. He looked extremely nervous and brought bad news to everyone. "Quick, move the tree house quickly. The king's elite guards are already on the way. There are more than 100 people, and they will surround this place soon." All the magicians in the hall were shocked. "You were discovered again so soon? Didn't you just move yesterday? It seems that the king is determined to drive out our guild and kill them all. Why don't you forget about the treehouse? Pack your things and run away." "Where can you run? Can you outrun the elite guards?" "Well, for several years, the Fairy Tale Guild had to live a homeless life due to being fully wanted by the kingdom. The Mechanical Geek Levy also improved the structure of the guild treehouse at that time. In the event of an emergency, the entire treehouse can be uprooted and quickly bounced far away, allowing everyone to escape quickly. It was through this method that Fairy Tale managed to escape the pursuit that lasted for several years." Listening to everyone's uneasiness, Lucy asked more and more irritably, "Levy, has the machine been repaired? The royal guards have arrived at the entrance of the guild and will come in at any time." Levy was equally worried and said impatiently, "What are you urging? After moving so many times, the magic source is no longer enough. Even if the machine is repaired, it can't be started again. So we can't run away this time?" Levy nodded reluctantly and said regretfully, "I've tried my best. All the magic items in the guild have been taken out and charged, but it's still not enough to activate the ejection device." The guild suddenly became silent. There was dead silence. Many people began to look around, looking at the dilapidated but warm hall with nostalgia, the guild treehouse that had sheltered them countless times. The look on his face was full of frustration and reluctance, as if he was saying his final farewell. Once they are all captured by the royal army, they may never have the chance to meet their partners again in the future. As for this tree house, it can only be burned to the ground and reduced to ashes. There was silence for a long time. Natsu slowly put away the sad look on his face, changed from his usual cowardice, walked towards the middle of the hall, and said seriously, "Everyone, although we no longer have any magic to use, at least we can't just sit back and wait for death, right? Even if we are destined to be executed by the royal army, in the end." After the words fell, everyone in the hall looked at each other. Lucy walked forward, glanced at Natsu meaningfully, and said with approval, "Well said, Natsu. I won't beat you today." Forehead. Natsu was ashamed. At this moment, everyone in the guild also came to their senses, echoing what Natsu just said. "Fight them. After being hunted for so many years, I have had enough of this kind of life." "I agree too. I don't steal or rob. I get paid by completing the tasks assigned by the client. Why should I be wanted? That's right. I will fight for the guild with Juvia-chan until the end. Gray, get out. Just when everyone was enthusiastic, a weak voice suddenly came from the entrance of the back hall corridor. Can I say something? Everyone looked around. It was Mo Bai and Lee Santa behind him. Lucy frowned slightly and said doubtfully, Mo Bai? It's very dangerous here now. The Royal Army will come soon. You should leave quickly. We can delay your time for a while if we stay. Mo Bai chuckled, shook his head, and walked straight to Natsu. Natsu, what's the name of the leader of that elite guard you mentioned? Recalling what he saw at that time, Natsu said, that man has chased us many times. I have seen him. I think his name is Jace. Jace? Mo Bai searched his memory and couldn't find any pictures of this name appearing in Fairy Tail. It seems like he's just a walk-on, looking around at the familiar yet unfamiliar partners in the guild again. Mo Bai slightly increased his volume and said calmly, I can understand how you want to protect the guild. But after all, they have powerful magic equipment, and we are almost defenseless. If you just rush out like this apart from building momentum, it will be no different from giving away someone's life. Before Mo Bai could finish speaking, Lucy interrupted impatiently. Then what can you do? You can't go out and kneel down and beg the Royal Army to let us go, right? Mo Bai smiled and then expressed his thoughts. I forgot to introduce to you the world I originally lived in, Aslant. It was a country full of magic. In Aslant, magicians don't need to use props. They can cast all kinds of practical magic by relying on their own strength alone. Levy seemed to understand what Mo Bai meant. You mean you don't need props to use magic? Mo Bai nodded slightly, and as he opened his right palm, a bright flame flickered from it. Everyone immediately felt the essence of magic in it and looked at Mo Bai in shock. He really didn't use magic items? The magic power was generated from his body, and this magic power seems not to be weaker than the various attack equipment we used before. But Mo Bai alone can't deal with the hundreds of guard soldiers outside. Why don't you use this magic power to power the treehouse? It's better to take the best option at this time. After much discussion, only then did everyone realize that Mo Bai had already begun to walk steadily towards the outside of the guild. But Yin Danfeng quietly said a word. There may be a lot of noise later. Be careful to protect yourself, and don't get hurt. The treehouse door was slowly pushed open, until Mo Bai's figure left the hall. The shocked guild members then realized that Mo Bai was going to fight the hundreds of elite royal guards alone. Is he really okay? This is too risky. Don't worry, I forgot to tell you that when Brother Mo Bai rescued me, he also defeated Shujboy. From the corner, a smart girl's voice suddenly came. Everyone followed the sound. It was Lee Santa who spoke. Unlike others, Lee Santa looked at Mo Bai's back with eyes full of expectation and appreciation. Obviously, he has absolute confidence in his strength. Outside the treehouse, the endless desert was filled with a mighty royal guard at some point. Hundreds of strong soldiers were fully armed from head to toe, with swords, spears, halberds, muskets, and cannon barrels. They represent the strongest war-ready force in the entire kingdom of Edolas. At the front of the team, Leader Jace's eyes were cold and hard, vowing to remove the thorn in his side. Fairy Tail, as long as I catch you all today, I will be able to serve as the captain of the soon-to-be-formed 5th Demonic War Force, as a matter of course. Jace was wearing an armor as dark as ink, and his eyes were full of desire for war and killing. In terms of strength, he is no worse than the other 4 captains of the Demonic War troops, but he just lacks some achievements. If you can destroy Fairy Tail now, it will obviously be a stepping stone for your promotion. As the door of the tree house in front slowly opened, Jace immediately carefully held his sword and gestured to the surrounding guards to be alert. The situation of Fairy Tail is still unclear. If the other party wants to fight with you, it may cause some losses, so it is better to be careful. Their eyes met in front of the bookstore door. Jace and his royal guards were shocked to find that only one person walked out of the guild. It was Mo Bai. Mo Bai looked at each other calmly. The leader should be the Jace that Natsu mentioned. It's a pity that the strength of the magic items on him is not as strong as that of Bairo and Shujboy. But he seems to be a few years older than me. To be able to become the commander of the royal army of Edolas at this age is probably a group of young people with very good qualifications. Jace frowned. He picked up the wanted book on his waist and checked it. He raised his head several times and compared it with Mo Bai one by one. It can be read over and over again. But he has never found a wanted criminal whose information matches the Mo Bai in front of him. Jace's interest was waning, and he shouted forward. Your information is not on the wanted list. If you know what's going on, leave immediately and don't affect the Royal Guard's performance of official duties. Mo Bai had no intention of leaving. Under the gaze of the soldiers, he walked towards Jess step by step and whispered, Your list is too old. I'm also a member of Fairy Tail. Maybe you can add me to it. Jace was stunned. What kind of strange request is this? Someone actually wants to add himself to the wanted list? Chapter 80 for the Fire Dragon's Double Flame Blades. At the same time, the originally closed door of the treehouse opened again, and familiar fugitive fairies walked out, standing firmly behind Mo Bai. Jace seemed to understand the situation at hand and sneered. It turns out that you were the foreign aid invited by those goblins. No wonder they neither ran away nor resisted. However, it is not so easy to be the first person. He looked Mo Bai up and down with interest again. Jace suddenly laughed sinisterly, pointed at the royal soldier beside him, and said playfully, Let's do this. I'll have a fight with you later. If you lose, I'll take you back to the palace to face trial. They stay here to level Fairy Tail. If I lose, I certainly won't give up. They will still bulldoze this guild that should have died long ago. The elements of the threat are self-evident. In Jace's view, Fairy Tail at this time was just a piece of fat fish meat on a chopping board, a second-class meritorious service that was about to befall him. How could you let them go so easily? When Mo Bai heard this, his face also changed slightly. Since these so-called royal guards are going to bulldoze Fairy Tail no matter what then, we can only kill everyone. As the fiery red dragon-slaying crystal in the body is activated, the magic flame gradually jumps from Mo Bai's fingertips. Just as he was preparing to attack, he heard Natsu's voice from behind. Mo Bai, take this weapon. A long stick flew past. Mo Bai raised his right arm and caught it steadily. Thanks. Taking the weapon in his hand, Mo Bai discovered that it was not a stick, but a long knife with both upper and lower blades. The structure was very special. If you're not careful when using it, you may stab yourself to death with the other end before you even touch the enemy. A magic item? It's a pity that the magic power inside has been exhausted. If it could be recharged, think of this. Mo Bai was not in a hurry to explode the newly brewed fire magic power, but instead transferred all of it into the long knife in his hand. With the continuous injection of energy, the long knife also changes at a speed visible to the naked eye. The originally dull pattern suddenly glowed with a more dazzling fiery red light. The blade was burning with blazing red flames, like a flaming blade from hell. Success! And on the opposite side, seeing the movement from Mo Bai, Jess immediately made up his mind. Change will happen later. We must capture him quickly. The Fairy Tail group has been running away for so long, and it is estimated that the entire guild will not be able to produce much magic power. As long as we deal with this kid, the entire guild will be able to capture it. Jace was about to order a collective siege. In an instant, the figure of Mo Bai, who was originally standing there, disappeared out of thin air like a ghost. The royal guards who were ready to go looked at each other, not knowing each other's situation. An ominous premonition suddenly arose in Jace's heart. The next second, suddenly the screams of the guards came from beside him. Jace hurriedly followed the sound and saw 3 soldiers who were fully armed and wearing fine armor. At this moment, a raging fire ignited on the body, rolling and wailing crazily on the ground. But the fire demon seemed to be unable to extinguish it, biting the soldier's body. What's going on? Captain, we didn't see clearly either. There was a golden light that flashed across our eyes just now, and then the 3 of them suddenly caught fire for no apparent reason. Jesse was shocked. When he turned his head, he saw a scene that made him even more unbelievable. Within sight, brilliant wings of light sprouted from Mo Bai's back, and his figure quickly entered and exited the battlefield like lightning. Wherever he passed, a scorching wind was immediately stirred up, mixed with terrifying magic power. And the fire blade in his hand kept waving during this period. The sword, fire, and shadow can always stab the soldier's body accurately, igniting the armor as tough as iron until it is burned to ashes. In just half a minute, the Royal Guards, known as the strongest combat-ready force in the kingdom of Edolas, had fallen to more than a dozen people. Everyone at Fairy Tail, who was providing moral support to Mo Bai in the distance, saw this scene. The speed of Mo Bai's attacks, the strength of his magic power, and the cleanness of his methods had already dazzled them. Everyone was dumbfounded except Lisana. Elfman turned his head stiffly and stammered, "Lisana, I just realized it. The shubboy you were talking about is not the captain of the 4th Demonic War Force, is it?" "Of course," Lisana replied with a proud face. Mo Bai can defeat Shujboy. No wonder you are so confident. It turns out he really has that strength. Lucy walked forward with a wry smile, patted Lisana on the shoulder, and said, "It seems that you really brought a savior to the guild this time." Lisana shook her head. No. Brother Mo Bai said that although he is not in the same world, he is originally a member of Fairy Tail and one of his own. His eyes returned to the battlefield. Mo Bai waved the fire blade again, flying away the last soldier in front of him. After a brief pause, Jace finally looked at him again. At this time, Mo Bai's eyes were burning like torches, and the exposed skin all over his body was glowing red with high temperature. The terrifying, majestic magic power was spilling out everywhere, like a hellish Shura. Queen Jess took a few steps back and shouted to the defeated general beside her, "Quick, activate the backup energy and form a formation of destruction. As long as the destructive energy cannon is assembled, even if he is made of steel and iron, he can be blasted to pieces." When the soldiers under his command heard this, their hearts suddenly rekindled a glimmer of morale to defeat Mo Bai. They all took off their armor, groped around with their hands for a while, and took out a spherical emerald the size of a dragon's eye. This is a top grade, or that only the Royal Guards can enjoy. And under Jess's order, the emeralds were gathered together and slowly filled into the backpack behind the artillery soldier, making a low and disturbing rumble. Looking at the series of actions of the Royal Guards, Mo Bai thought to himself, "They seem to be stepping up their tactics." Regarding combat, Mo Bai has always adhered to the attitude of saving trouble when it can be done. Even if you crush the enemy with strength, you don't like to leave the opponent a chance to release his trump card. At the moment, naturally, Jace will not get what he wants. Mo Bai's whole body once again burst into magical flames, and he quickly rotated and impacted the fire blade between his fingers, setting off a billowing heat wave. It's time to try out what kind of power the dragon-slaying magic will be after borrowing the power of the weapon. Under Jess's constant urging, the Royal Guards hurriedly filled the cannon and pointed the black hole's muzzle at Mo Bai. But the moment he saw Mo Bai, his body froze in place, trembling uncontrollably. Jess sensed the danger and looked up, but his face turned pale. At this moment, Mo Bai has already wielded the fire blade and charged all the way with huge firepower. And behind him, there is actually a projection of a dark red fire dragon, its body covering the sky and the sun, looming. This is a dragon. The words in Jace's throat have not yet completely come out. The giant dragon's gaze suddenly dropped, and then it flapped its huge red wings, raised its head, and let out a low dragon roar. Mo Bai rushed over with the roar of the dragon, raised the fire knife in his hand, and chopped down with all his strength. The twin flame blades of the fire dragon. Chapter 85: Aesthetics of Violence. The flaming blade slashed down. Flames rose out of thin air on the barren desert, surrounding the remaining soldiers of the Royal Guard. As for the artillery that was ready to go, it had been completely roasted and turned into a pile of scrap metal. The hiss of burning flames and the screams of soldiers reached his ears. Jace's heart beat faster and faster, and he finally realized that he was in a desperate situation. Where did these goblins find these monsters? Jace cursed and looked around, trying to find a breakthrough location. But in the midst of the raging fire, Jace suddenly saw the figure slowly walking towards him in front of him. It was Mo Bai holding a fire blade. I was instantly frightened. Behind him was wrapped in flames again, and there was no way to retreat. Jace had no choice but to bite the bullet and shout hysterically, We are the royal guard of Edolas. If you dare to touch us, King Faust will definitely hunt you and fairy tale to the ends of the earth." When Mo Bai heard this, the corner of his mouth suddenly turned into a funny smile. Still pressing forward step by step, until he was only a few steps away from Jace, he said softly, "Don't worry, that old Faust won't be able to sit on the throne for a few more days." Jace wanted to say something more. However, Mo Bai inserted the fire blade in his hand straight into the ground, activating the final flame wind, sweeping all the royal guards, including Jace, into it. The fire in the desert suddenly became more powerful, like a flower blooming with flames and a phoenix rising from nirvana. After a short period of brilliance, it slowly dimmed, until the flames completely dissipated. The people at Fairy Tale looked from a distance and saw that the desert they had just fought was covered in ashes, and the royal guards of hundreds of people all fell without exception. At this moment, only one person was still standing calmly on the field. It's a Mo Bai. After realizing it, everyone finally couldn't hide their ecstasy and laughed wildly. "We won? What a powerful fire magic. It's simply a violent aesthetic. Brother Mo Bai really did it. He protected our entire guild. Why are you still cheering? Hurry and freeze. Lift Mo Bai up." As for Mo Bai, after completing the final blow, the fire blade in his hand finally couldn't bear his huge magic power and instantly fell into pieces. After regaining control of the magic power in his body, Mo Bai couldn't help but smack his lips. "It's a pity that the quality of this magic weapon is a bit poor. I originally thought that the Fire Dragon's double flame blades are very powerful, and I can use them more times in the future." At this time, Mo Bai also felt the movement coming from the front. Looking up, he saw Fairy Tale's friends running towards him happily. Mo Bai subconsciously raised his arms to say hello, but was grabbed by Mikao and Wakaba, who were running towards him. Realizing something was wrong, Mo Bai immediately shouted, "Huh? Wait, there is no need to be so grand." But apparently no one listened to him. Surrounded by a group of Fairy Tale members, Mo Bai was lying in the middle and was thrown high into the air by several people, and was immediately caught firmly. "I have been chased by this group of royal troops for so long, and I finally feel relieved today. Yes, Mo Bai, you saved all of us this time. How should I thank you? Otherwise, you can just take away any of the beauties from the guild that you like, and we will never stop you." "I agree. Of course, you can't take away my Juvia-chan hee." It was not easy to break away from the warm embrace of everyone. Mo Bai's side view suddenly glanced at Naz, who was following the team. Natsu was acting strange. Almost everyone feels happy when they're out of bad temper. Only Natsu was bending down and following behind, unable to hide the sadness on his face. It seems like I'm going to cry the next second. Even though the Natsu in this world is a bit cowardly, why is he still dejected at this time? Mo Bai couldn't help but stepped forward and patted Naz on the shoulder in surprise. "What's wrong?" The moment he saw Mo Bai, the tears rolling in Naz's eyes finally couldn't help but burst out, and he said aggrievedly, "Then, that knife is called Crimson Tide. I bought it with the reward from my first commission. After following me for so many years, you broke it just once." Only then did Mo Bai realize the inferior weapons that he had just casually damaged and placed in the Fairy Tale Guild were probably the magic items that they had worked hard to buy for a long time. Mo Bai scratched his head in embarrassment and comforted him like a child. "Ahem, a hug. I'll buy a new one to compensate you next time." Return to the Fairy Tale lobby. Everyone was still happily talking about the battle just now. After learning that Mo Bai did not drink, Lee Sena poured him a glass of orange juice diligently, sat next to him obediently, cupped her cheeks with her delicate hands, and said with a smile, "Brother Mo Bai is quite in the limelight today. You girl, you know how to tease me." Mo Bai rolled his eyes helplessly and drank up the drink in the cup. Suddenly something came to his mind, and he lowered his voice and said, "I took a special pill to be able to use magic freely in Edolas. Unfortunately, I forgot to bring you one at the time." Lee Sena didn't take it to heart, waved her hands and pursed her lips, smiling. "It doesn't matter. After so many years in Edolas, I have become accustomed to the life here. I almost forgot that I could use magic before. When Lysana was a child, she followed her brothers and sisters to leave Great Village and go to Fairy Tale. Not long after joining the guild, the three children began to practice receiving magic together with Makarov's help. Different from Mirajane's demon soul and Elfman's beast soul, the animal soul that Lysana masters can add the power of various birds and animals to herself, and use the characteristics of the animals to achieve the effects of flying, acceleration, and strength enhancement. Recalling her past scenes in Aslant, Lysana couldn't help but feel a little lost. It wasn't until a beautiful figure in blue flashed before her eyes that she was brought back to reality. It was Jivia. Jivia smiled at Mo Bai, and Lysana sat down gently next to them and said tactfully, Mo Bai, do you have time? Mo Bai was startled. Why is Jivia looking for me now? He couldn't just impress her because he was too charming in that battle just now, and then confess his feelings to her, right? Of course, this thought only passed by for a moment, and I am not narcissistic to that extent yet. Chapter 86 Universal Power Bank. Before Mo Bai could ask, a distressed male voice came from the hall. You? Jivia-chan went to chat with another man. She doesn't love me anymore. Mo Bai had a black streak on his head, and even without looking, he knew it was Gray crying. Mo Bai secretly cursed in his heart. Gray in this Edolas world is really a liquor. In comparison, the original Aslant's stripping and perversion is better, even though he always walks around in front of me. Putting his eyes back on Juvia's beautiful face, Mo Bai asked slightly seriously, What's the matter? That's right. Upon hearing this, Jivia took off the blue-black water gun that had been attached to her waist, handed it to Mo Bai, and introduced, This is a high-pressure water gun powered by magic power. It is the weapon I have been using to fulfill my previous commissions. It's just that it was no longer usable due to the exhaustion of magic power a week ago. I was thinking that since you can freely release magic power yourself, maybe you can also charge magic items? Looking at Juvia's big, watery eyes full of expectation, Mo Bai realized, this blue-haired beauty thinks of herself as a power bank. But having said that, the first time Miss Gang asked me to come to Fairy Tale was to ask them to bring in reinforcements. Think back to when you first arrived at Edolas. When talking about the battle plan, Miss Gang's expression was particularly serious, and he seemed to be quite afraid of the Royal Army. Although the number of Fairy Tale members is a drop in the bucket compared to the Royal Army, it is still better than nothing. After several battles, although Mo Bai also had a rough judgment on the strength level of Wang Guojun, for the sake of safety, he still asked the guild for help. After thinking about it, Mo Bai took the water gun with both hands and said softly, Although I'm not completely sure, I can at least give it a try. A look of joy immediately appeared on Juvia's face, and she bent down to thank her. Thank you, thank you. Mo Bai's eyes swept across the entire gun body, and his palm rubbed the magic texture attached to it. Judging from the first impression, the quality of this weapon seems to be not much different from Natsu's knife, and they are both relatively rough magic items. Mo Bai secretly smiled bitterly in his heart. Don't use too much magic power and explode Juvia's weapons. In the dark space of consciousness, bits of blue light flickered, and the water attribute dragon-slaying magic crystal rotated accordingly. Magic power came from Mo Bai's fingertips and was slowly poured into Juvia's high-pressure water gun. This time, Mo Bai was extremely cautious in controlling the strength of the magic, lest the magic power increase slightly and the magic items would not be able to support the explosion. Under Juvia's eager eyes, after about half a minute, the magic lines on the gun came to life again. Mo Bai smiled lightly and handed the high-pressure water gun to Juvia again and said, The magic power is filled. Let's try it. This so fast. Juvia was a little disbelieving at first, but the moment she lifted the barrel of the cannon again with both hands, she immediately felt a stream of pure water magic flowing through it. The magic is even more powerful than when I first purchased it. Juvia could no longer contain her inner ecstasy and was about to thank Mo Bai again when a round guy suddenly rolled over and stood in front of her. The smile on Mo Bai's face suddenly solidified. Gray? Why are you wearing so many clothes again? I feel hot just looking at you. Gray smiled innocently. Hey, you just need to wear more clothes to stay warm. It's so comfortable rolling around on the ground like this. After Gray finished speaking, he turned his body another 180 degrees on the ground and looked at Juvia with a flattering face. Juvia-chan, I heard that you want to try out magic items, right? Please treat me as a living target and ravage me to your heart's content. Juvia's face was full of disgust. Go away. I feel so hot when I see you. Take off your clothes and come to me again. No, no, no. Seeing Gray's appearance, Mo Bai had an increasing urge to kick him out of the guild. And right now, Mo Bai suddenly felt someone tapping him on the shoulder and looked back without thinking. Natsu. Natsu scratched his head and smiled shyly at himself. After Mo Bai's repeated questioning, Natsu took out a red and black cannon barrel that was about the same size as Juvia's high-pressure water gun and said coyly, "This is my other magic tool, the flamethrower. Can you help me put some magic power into it?" No problem, Mo Bai readily agreed. After he finished speaking, he placed his palms on the cannon barrel. Under the illumination of the red magic light, the surrounding air seemed to have increased in temperature. After less than 10 seconds, Mo Bai handed the flamethrower back with confidence. Natsu couldn't help but ask in confusion, Is this good?" Mo Bai smiled. "You'll know if you try it?" Compared to the power of Water Dragon, Mo Bai is obviously more proficient in using his fire attribute magic, and 10 seconds is enough. Natsu was dubious, stood up, opened the side window on the wall next to him, and pressed his finger tightly on the trigger of the flamethrower. The index finger joint is slightly retracted and the trigger is pulled. Boom! The majestic and scorching flame energy suddenly gushes out from the muzzle, and the violent heat flow is like the roar of a fire dragon, blasting forward at extremely fast speeds. In the blink of an eye, it had reached the end of the line of sight and exploded in the desert, rising up into a fiery red cloud of fire. Corresponding to this powerful power is the huge recoil of the flamethrower. Natsu obviously didn't realize this in time. The moment the magic power was released, his body uncontrollably took a few steps back and sat down on the ground. Natsu stared blankly through the window, looking at the fire clouds rising in the distance, his face filled with disbelief. Just now, I did this. Chapter 87. The trajectory of this gun is left? Naturally, Natsu knew very well how powerful his weapon was. It is usually used to scare people when they are being chased by the royal army, and its firepower is not worth mentioning at all. But once it passed through Mo Bai's hands, the flamethrower seemed to directly transform into a civilian nuclear bomb. It was called an artifact. Natsu was still stunned. Mo Bai had already walked up to him, smiled slightly, and stretched out his arm, saying, "There is no doubt that the attack was caused by you. This weapon is of good quality, and it can store a lot of fire magic power. It's just that its original magic power reserve is too small to exert its power." The shock in Natsu's eyes slowly diminished. He stretched out his trembling right hand, held Mo Bai, and stood up. Out of excitement, Natsu's lips moved, but not a single word came out. Mo Bai couldn't help but joked. "Why can't you even speak?" Natsu blushed. "It took a long time to squeeze out a few words from my throat. Thank you, thank you." The magic items that helped Juvia and Natsu were charged one after another, coupled with the movement just caused. Everyone in Fairy Tale, who always likes to eat melons and join in the fun, once again gathered around Mo Bai. "Hey, brother Mo Bai, why don't you help me take a look? The magic power of my weapon has been used up for a long time. And me. Gray, can you step aside and let one person take the position of two people?" "No, step aside and get out of here." Mo Bai also sighed softly when he saw the crowd rushing forward to hand over their magic tools frantically. This is the rhythm to squeeze yourself dry. But, first of all, as partners in the same guild, they have taken good care of Lisana over the past few years. Secondly, the war with the royal army will require everyone's strength. Mo Bai didn't refuse too much. Activate the dragon-slaying crystals with different properties in the body, and magic pours from the body into the palms, and is slowly instilled into various magic items. After all, he is a dragon slayer, and his energy comes back after just eating a table or a chair. And under the nourishment of the magical aura, The magical textures in front of the eyes burst out with light again, reflecting into everyone's sight. But it couldn't cover up the ecstasy in everyone's eyes. Isn't this the magical power they have longed for? And after being infused with Mo Bai's magic power, many people were surprised to find that the magic power of the weapon was even much stronger than when they first bought it. If you're tired, take a rest first, brother Mo Bai. Charging so many magic items at once will take a lot of energy from you, right? Just as Mo Bai was concentrating on continuing to activate the Dragon Slayer crystal, Lysana's gentle voice suddenly came to his ears. Immediately afterwards, a pink wet towel was placed on his face. Immediately brought some coolness. Mo Bai smiled and was not polite to Lysana. He even joked, as considerate as your sister. I wonder which brat I will cheapen in the future. Lysana's face suddenly turned red, and she quickly withdrew her hand that was wiping Mo Bai's sweat in embarrassment, and said angrily, Mo Bai, brother, what are you talking about? Watching Lysana pretend to be angry and leave, Mo Bai shook his head helplessly and turned to look at Alzak, the last wizard in the guild who was waiting for recharging. Alzak smiled and handed over his gun, bowed deeply to Mo Bai, and thanked, sorry for the trouble. Mo Bai is no stranger to Artsakh either. Whether in Aslant or Edolas, not much seems to have changed in Artsakh. They all use guns as weapons, and at the same time, they all have a girlfriend who is in love, Biska, who is also a sharpshooter. In Mo Bai's impression, the two seem to be the first among this group of young wizards to get married and have children. With the injection of various mixed energies, the gun quickly regained its magic power and shined brightly. Mo Bai gently touched the gun in his hand, but did not immediately hand it back to Arzak, and immediately asked, This gun, can I try it? Certainly. Arzak readily agreed, took out 2 bullets from his pocket, and handed them over. Long before time travel, Mo Bai liked to play some FPS games and was also interested in guns. I just haven't been able to try it myself. Now is a perfect opportunity. Under Arzak's guidance, Mo Bai quickly loaded the ammunition, gently placed his head on the scope, and squinted one eye. Lock the target and slam the trigger with your finger. Bang! The bullet suddenly penetrated from the barrel and flew straight through the air at an extremely fast speed. Then it hit the window next to the flower pot with perfect precision. Clang! The crisp cracking sound immediately attracted the attention of the entire guild again, and broken glass shards were scattered on the ground. Silence fell. For a long time, among the crowd, Natsu crept out and silently cleaned up the broken glass. Seeing everyone's eyes turning towards him, Mo Bai hurriedly put the gun back in Alzak's hand, trying to shift the blame. But just in this case, Macau walked up cheerfully and patted Mo Bai on the shoulder, saying with a smile, Awesome, little brother Mo Bai. Alzak always points where to hit, but you are different. You point where to hit. Mo Bai was ashamed. Well, if you don't know how to praise me, don't praise me him. Tactics coughed twice, and then Mo Bai asked Arzak again. I remember that the position I aimed at was correct. My hand didn't have cramps or anything, so why did I miss so much? Arzak smiled and replied happily. Yes, my gun's trajectory is left. Seeing everyone's doubts, Alzak looked solemn and said plausibly, As a mage who uses a gun, I face the risk of being chased by the royal army every day, so I don't want the gun to be picked up by the enemy and used directly after I die. Mo Bai suddenly felt hot in his chest and had the urge to vomit blood. He looked at Alzak faintly. Mo Bai asked in a hoarse voice, Do you think there is a possibility that the cause of your death is that the ballistic path deflected to the left? After a while, seeing that everyone had gotten their favorite magic items, Mo Bai walked back to the center of the hall, cleared his throat, and said, Everyone, now that the magic items in your hands are full of energy, Fairy Tail is no longer a soft persimmon that anyone can pinch. You are powerful magicians. Good. Thunderous cheers and applause came from all around. Mo Bai looked around again and finally revealed the original purpose of the trip. Actually, this time I came to the guild mainly because I wanted to ask everyone for help. Before he finished speaking, the surrounding people immediately responded enthusiastically. Just say it. You gave us our magic power, and we will live through fire and water without hesitation. Don't say just one piece. I'll agree to 10 pieces. Everyone was enthusiastic. When Mo Bai saw this, he became more serious and said, "This matter starts with Mist Gang. This name may be unfamiliar to you, but in your world, he has another identity, Prince Jalal." Under everyone's stunned gaze, Mo Bai told everything about Edolas and Anima's plan from beginning to end. Including this trip, Mist Gang asked him to come to Fairy Tale to find helpers. A long while, everyone who had recovered from their illness looked at each other in shock and finally learned the truth about their world. Natsu smacked his lips and said, "No wonder the country wants to ban all magician guilds. It turns out that Edolas' magic is so lacking that it has already set its sights on other worlds." Mo Bai nodded and affirmed, "This is also the purpose of my coming here. If it were just a few days later, the town and guild where I was originally might have been attracted by the magic or converted by the anima device. But these things are state secrets, so it's normal for you not to know." And indeed it is. In order to stabilize the people's hearts, King Faust of Edolas has always claimed that magic is generated and converted by anima devices, never mentioning that it was snatched from other worlds, or even the lives of magicians from other worlds, and converted into magic power. Juvia frowned slightly and asked in confusion, "Mo Bai, you seem to have mentioned Prince Jalal just now." Mo Bai spread his hands and said, "Mist Gang, he is an opponent of the anima plan. He is now negotiating with the king and wants to stop anima in a peaceful way." But Mo Bai immediately changed the topic and continued, "Mistigan has also prepared himself and asked me to come to you for help. Once the negotiation breaks down, it can only be solved by force. In addition, since the enemy we are facing is the entire kingdom army of Edolas, their numbers may be far greater than ours. I won't force you to do this. If you are willing to fight with me, we will set off immediately after the failure of Mistgun. If you are not willing, you can just stay in the guild." Chapter 88 Crazy King. Mo Bai just finished speaking. Call! Suddenly, a strange gust of wind blew up outside the guild, and the doors suddenly blew open. Everyone immediately looked warily. Mo Bai smelled a familiar scent in the wind and raised his hand slightly to signal that everyone should not panic. Looking in the direction, a masked man wearing a blue and black cloak stood in the light, slowly raising his head and staring ahead. "Gently take off the mask on your head, revealing your handsome and youthful face." And there is a scarlet tattoo engraved on his right eye. It was the Mr. Gang who brought Mo Bai to Edolas earlier. Lucy looked at him carefully for a while and asked tentatively, "Are you Prince Jalal?" Mr. Gang nodded lightly, walked slowly among the crowd, and faced Mo Bai. Mo Bai raised his eyebrows and asked, "The negotiation ended so soon? What was the result?" Mr. Gang smiled mockingly to himself and said bitterly, "You are right. It is impossible for the king and his staff to give up the anima plan. In the end, they will inevitably have to fight with them. Even I was almost left in the royal city." When Mr. Gang said this, he deliberately emphasized the identity of the king. It seems that he wants to break off the relationship with him. "Tell me more about it." Mo Bai casually moved the 3.5-legged broken wooden chair next to him and motioned for Mist Gang to sit down and chat. Mirage also thoughtfully brought hot tea. "Thanks." Mr. Gang squeezed out a smile from the corner of his mouth, then quickly put it away, telling Mo Bai and the surrounding Fairy Tale members about his experience in going to the royal city. "Previously, I did sneak into Anima's control base and found a way to successfully cut off all its energy devices. In a short time, they should not be able to restart it. I thought they would give up and at least be restrained, but..." Mo Bai took over the conversation and said, "But you still underestimated their ambition." "That's right." Mr. Gang sighed and continued, "Perhaps they can already be called crazy. When I entered the palace to negotiate, the king thought he could catch me easily and inadvertently revealed their next plan to the people around him. Everyone at Fairy Tale immediately moved forward and asked, 'What's the plan?' Mr. Gang turned his attention to Mo Bai again and said, 'The news in the royal city is quite well informed. The king and others already know about your successive defeats of Byro and Shujboy.'" Mo Bai shrugged non-committally. "They have to know sooner or later anyway. What's more, 2 national-level cadres were missing out of thin air. No matter where they were placed, it would be considered a major safety incident, Mr. Gang said. According to some records, the king and others already know your identity as a dragon-slaying mage, and they have set their sights on the powerful source of dragon-slaying magic in your body. Mo Bai couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Why do these people have this problem? Do they just like to stare at me? Mr. Gang bowed slightly towards Mo Bai apologetically. It wasn't until he saw the latter waving his hands as if nothing had happened that he continued to explain. There is a treasure called the Dragon Lock Cannon hidden in the basement of the palace. As long as the Dragon Slayer mage is used as a source, it can gather and fire cannon fire with powerful energy. Although Anima has been closed, but because of your appearance, the king and others temporarily changed their plan to capture you and use it to launch the Dragon Lock Cannon. Lucy was confused and interrupted. Since the king wants magic power, why didn't he capture Mo Bai and extract his magic power directly? Instead of going to the trouble of activating the Dragon Lock Cannon, Mr. Gang paused and asked, "You should have heard of the island suspended above Edolas, Extania?" Everyone nodded. Extania is an island in the sky, and its citizens are flying cats like Happy and Carla. They are called Transcendents because the Transcendents have innate magic power in their bodies, the same as a slant. The Queen of the Transcendents is even suspected of possessing the ability to control the life and death of all things. Therefore, for a long time, Transcendents have generally believed that they are better than humans. He is an angel, and humans are an inferior species. Humans should obey the orders of the Transcendent, even if they sacrifice their lives. The Queen of the Beyonders has supreme power over King Edolas. For a long time, there have been few disobedient and transcendent beings in human beings. Seeing Mo Bai, he nodded to express understanding. Now, Mr. Gang finally revealed King Faust's crazy plan. The king wants to use the terrifying magic power in Mo Bai's body to launch the Dragon Lock Cannon and bomb the entire Extania. Once the plan succeeds, all Transcendents will be killed or injured or converted into magic, which will be converted into magic power and continuously fall from the sky. At that time, Edolas will no longer have the problem of lack of magic power. But like a slant, there will be magic power even in the air. Everyone in Fairy Tale took a breath of cold air almost at the same time and looked at Mist Gun blankly. They never imagined that the king's ambition would be so great. Not only is it targeting Mo Bai, but it even wants to destroy the kingdom of Extania, which has always been superior to humans. Mo Bai narrowed his eyes slightly and murmured in a low voice, "You want to capture me and use it as a source of living magic? I have such a big appetite, and I'm not afraid of dying." Chapter 89 goes straight to Huanglong. Anima's reversal plan, Mystigan continued. "When I go to the royal city this time, I have secretly contacted Pansa Lily, the captain of the Royal Army's first magic warfare unit. He was also a member of Extania. The Royal Army is too powerful to compete head-on. So, we have already discussed." "What has been discussed?" everyone asked. Mr. Gang took a deep breath and said decisively, "Completely reverse the anima. Return all the magic power of Edolas to the world of Aslant, where Mo Bai lives." The sound fell to the crowd like thunder, giving every magician present a blow to the head. Return all the magic power? Doesn't this mean that the already limited magic resources will completely disappear in the world of Edolas? In other words, even if this battle is successful, are we destined to no longer be able to use magic in the future? Facing the question, Mr. Gang nodded firmly. When he made this decision with Pansa Lily, he had already guessed how everyone would react. After all, magic has been with everyone for so many years. It is always difficult to accept that it is necessary to give up completely for a while. For a long time, let's listen to Mo Bai. Everyone's eyes slowly focused on Mo Bai. For such a major matter related to life and death, I couldn't make a decision for a while, so I had to find someone reliable to make the decision. Mo Bai stood up slowly, looked into Mr. Gang's eyes, and said calmly, "What are you going to do specifically?" A flash of excitement suddenly flashed in Mr. Gang's eyes, and he said bluntly, "The king doesn't know my thoughts yet, and according to his plan, He only needs to catch you in a short time to launch the dragon lock cannon. I guess Anima's stronghold will not be sent to guard heavily for the time being. We can completely capture it directly. If you want to completely operate the reversal magic, you need to operate there for at least half a day. In the meantime, please help us resist the royal army." After the words fell, Mist Gang stared at Mo Bai expectantly, waiting for his response. But Mo Bai thought for a moment and shook his head. This, just when everyone thought Mo Bai was refusing to reverse Anima's plan. Mo Bai said, "I have a better way." "What?" "I will rush into the royal city right now and kill your father." Realizing that there might be something wrong with his statement, Mo Bai adjusted his words and said again, "Ahem, as the saying goes, offense is the best defense. If I attract the attention of the king and all his troops, wouldn't the pressure on your side be much less?" "No," Mr. Gang immediately objected categorically. "As far as I know, the king is still planning to use the forbidden magic armor Dragon Knight. If you enter the royal city now, you will die." Dragon Knight? Many magicians who had heard of this name were immediately shocked. "You mean the sealed forbidden armor that nearly destroyed the entire kingdom during the research process?" Mr. Gang nodded. "That's right. This time the king is determined to capture Mo Bai alive. When the time comes, he will definitely launch the Dragon Knight at all costs." Everyone fell silent. Although Mo Bai had already shown amazing power before, easily defeating Shujboy and Jace one after another. But the legendary Dragon Knight is obviously not on the same level as these two people. His power has reached a terrifying level. Many years ago, when the Fairy Tale Guild in Edolas was first established, many people had witnessed the Royal Academy of Magic displaying the Dragon Knight. That day, due to the loss of control of magic, the entire town was almost razed to the ground by the destructive energy of the rampaging Dragon Knight. To this day, they can still recall the fear brought by that violent magical power. Mr. Gang looked at Mo Bai and added, "Since they want to break the boat, they will definitely instill all the magic power accumulated by Anima over the years into the Dragon Knight. Do you want to throw yourself into a trap?" Mo Bai heard this, but still smiled disapprovingly and gently spread his right palm in front of everyone. Within the palm of your hand, 8 types of magic beams with different attributes slowly emerged, each emitting unique light and power and complementing each other. It gradually condensed and bloomed into a beautiful flower composed of 8 colors. The essence of magic spreads from the stamens. This breath is like a breeze blowing lightly on everyone's faces, but it also carries a sense of majesty and oppression that cannot be ignored. For a moment, everyone was caught in this magical dragon-killing power, and they were a little lost. It wasn't until Mo Bai gently closed his palms and the flowers quietly disappeared that he smiled lightly and said, "Don't forget, I am a dragon slayer. How can I be afraid of a fake dragon? Everyone, just follow my plan. If you want, you can go to Anima's control center with Miss Gang at any time." Mr. Gang was about to retort, "Wait, did you listen to me?" But it was immediately overshadowed by the voices of Fairy Tale members who echoed loudly, "No problem. Since you can't use magic after the plan is successful, let's use it today. Even if there is no magic, wouldn't it be fine as long as the guild is still there? Not to mention that we can give those guys from the Royal Army a final beating. Brother Mo Bai has to face the Dragon Knight after all, which is much more dangerous than us, but we must come back alive." Mo Bai's eyes passed over the enthusiastic magicians one by one, and finally fell on Lisana. Lisana bit her red lips lightly. A trace of worry flashed in her beautiful eyes. She blushed and leaned into Mo Bai's ear and warned, "Be safe." "Yes, otherwise why would I go back to Aslant with you?" Mo Bai smiled heartily, activated the dragon-slaying magic crystal in his body, and the wings of the storm dragon suddenly appeared. "Wait, hey!" Mr. Gang sensed something was wrong and hurriedly stretched out his arms, trying to catch Mo Bai. But it went straight to nothing, as the light and shadow flickered in front of his eyes. Mo Bai quickly rushed out of the guild gate and walked away. This guy, Mistigan, was angry and anxious. He punched the 3-legged wooden table in front of him, cracking it from the middle and breaking into 2 halves. Lucy pushed Mr. Gang dissatisfied and said slightly angrily, "Hey, even though you are a prince, if you damage our guild's things casually, you will have to pay compensation according to the price. Also, when are we going to the anime you mentioned?" Mr. Gang had no choice but to stand up. After packing up his luggage and carrying the 5 staffs behind his back, he looked out from the open doorway. "Now get ready to go." Mo Bai still carries with him the map originally given to him by Miss Gang. The royal city is located in the center of the entire country, with the largest area and the most eye-catching location. At this speed, it won't take long to arrive. At this time, besides the Dragon Knight, Mo Bai was also thinking about another thing. Once the war with the royal army begins, we will inevitably meet the other Erza of Edolas. A crimson shadow slowly emerged from his mind. Mo Bai didn't have any sense of expectation. Because in Edolas, Erza is not a partner of the Fairy Tale Guild, but an enemy. Well, even though they look exactly the same, they're still enemies after all. If we meet, we still have to fight. Edolas and Aslant belong to parallel time and space, and most people can find another themselves in another world. But the members of Aslant's fairy tale may not necessarily be the magicians of the Edolas Fairy Tale Guild. It is even said that some people were friends in the original world, but became enemies on the other side. This is the case with Erza. In Aslant, she is Mo Bai's little girlfriend and the guild's Fairy Queen Erza Shukareto, available at Edolas. At this time, Erza had a completely different identity. Captain of the 2nd Demonic War Troop of the Royal Army, the initiator of repeated operations to exterminate the Fairy Tale Guild, the Fairy Hunter, Erza Netwaka. Chapter 90, Another Erza. Mo Bai soared in the sky with the wings of the Storm Dragon, and finally found traces of the town on the distant horizon. As the distance continues to shrink, the bustling streets and houses also continue to enlarge. Look down at the map again to confirm. Ahead is the Edolas Royal City. Mo Bai is preparing to lower his altitude slightly to observe the situation on the ground more clearly. But at this moment, he suddenly smelled a hint of murderous intent. The guards are indeed tight enough. Were they discovered so quickly? The wings of the storm dragon slightly increased the flapping frequency, and Mo Bai's body moved sideways. The next second, a white magic light beam passed through the original position, obviously directed at him. Mo Bai frowned slightly and turned his head to look in the direction of the light beam. A fat blue flying beast is in the center of the field of vision, flying towards him continuously. There seemed to be a red-haired woman standing on the back of the beast, holding a spear. The attack just now was made by her. Mo Bai has good eyesight and can distinguish people at a glance, but the corners of his mouth can't help but twitch. "I'm such a foul-mouthed person. What the hell are you talking about?" Roar! The sound of roaring beasts in the distance reached my ears. Mo Bai stopped dodging and simply changed the direction of flight and headed straight for the opponent. In his sight, the figure of the red-haired woman gradually enlarged and became clearer. She has a devilish figure that is the envy of all women, and her clothes are quite hot and bold. The gray-black spear in her hand makes people a little more afraid of her. Like a wild female leopard in the desert, she exudes dangerous and charming charm. Looking closely at her appearance, it is not difficult to find that she looks exactly like the Erza that Mo Bai is familiar with. It's just that there is a bit more coldness and murderous intent between his eyebrows. This person is none other than the captain of the Edolas 2nd Demonic War Force, the Goblin Hunter Erza Netwaka. The distance kept getting closer, until it stayed in the air above the beast's body. Mo Bai put away the wings of the storm dragon and jumped down. He stood firmly on the back of the beast and looked at the opposite Netwaka with cold eyes. Netwaka looked at Mo Bai, not hiding the coldness in his eyes, and spoke solemnly. "You are the dragon slayer of Aslant, right? I didn't expect that before we started hunting on a large scale, you came to our door yourself. Even though I was mentally prepared in advance, I knew that this was not the same person." But Netwaka threatened him coldly in the face of the person closest to him, which made Mo Bai feel awkward. However, Netwaka has always enjoyed killing. With his prey close in front of him, he naturally doesn't talk too much and directly activates the weapon in his hand. The first shot of the Ten Commandments spear, The iron spear. The fighting spirit surged. The spear in Netwaka's hand moved in response, and magic burst out. The spear suddenly gained a layer of pitch-black shell. The cold air was overwhelming, and the tip of the spear was pointed directly at Mo Bai's throat. When Mo Bai heard the word iron, out of the dragon slayer's instinctive reaction, he almost opened his mouth and chewed it. However, Mo Bai endured it after feeling that the magical aura emitted by this spear was quite strong. Xiao Jujio was beating in my heart. I remember that in the original plot, the two Erzas seemed to have a tie in the end, right? Netwaka relied on this heaven-defying weapon to fight Erza without losing any ground. So, that thing seems to be of good quality. If possible, take it back and give it to Erza. The cave dragon's shield. The moment the iron spear was about to touch him, Mo Bai immediately condensed his magic power with his hands and opened a giant shield in front of him, steadily blocking Netwaka's attack. Clang! The gun and shield overlapped, and a war-loving smile appeared on Netwaka's face, and he was about to use his strength to pierce the shield. Unexpectedly, Mo Bai took the first step and pushed forward with both hands. The invisible magic pressure directly ejected Netwaka and his gun forward. Netwaka staggered a few steps, quickly adjusted and stabilized her figure, and her cold and pretty face finally showed a bit of solemnity. Some strength. Mo Bai had a look of helplessness on his face. I've already taken down several of the royal army cadres at the same level as you. Are you sure you still want to fight me? The words have not yet finished. Netwaka interrupted directly. Ice Flame Spear. Turning his wrist, the Ten Commandments spear mobilized its magic power. Two beams of energy, one red and one blue, surged alternately on the tip of the gun, gradually wrapping around the entire body of the weapon. Then she grasped the gun steady with both hands. The 10 Rings gun seemed to appear as a phantom in an instant, splitting into two identical guns out of thin air, each wrapped with one of the red and blue magic powers, and its aura instantly increased several times compared to before. Netwaka shot out, stabbing Mo Bai in front of him, threatening to turn him into a hornet's nest. Steel Skin. The magic power of the Iron Dragon crystal burst out, and Mo Bai's hands were instantly covered with a layer of black scales. His arms were crossed, and he forcefully grabbed the tips of the two spears with his palms. Court Death. Netwaka snorted coldly, and then activated the two different magic powers already attached to the gun. In an instant, red and blue beams flew straight out of the gun body, flowing rapidly along the tip of the gun towards Mo Bai's palms. This move is the fifth form of the 10 Ring Spear. Netwaka once successfully stood out from the Edolas Kingdom's army by relying on the majestic magic offensive of ice and fire, and became the captain of the second magic war force. But as the confrontation continues to deepen, the surging ice-fire magic power continuously eroded Mo Bai's arms, but Mo Bai did not see any adverse reactions. Even the two hands that grasped the tip of his gun became tighter and tighter. Look up, with a hint of curvature appearing at the corner of Mo Bai's mouth. Only then did Netwaka realize with horror. His attack didn't cause any damage to Mo Bai at all, and the opponent even tried to snatch his weapon away. Chapter 91. My Erza is much better behaved than you after realizing this. Netwaka gritted his teeth and directly reversed the two energy flows that were still attacking Mo Bai on the ice and flame guns, and then flowed directly back into his body along the gun body. Although you will also be harmed by magical energy by doing so, you can also strengthen your control over the 10 Rings gun in a short period of time. The ice and fire energy suddenly stopped running. Under Netwaka's hard pull, the tips of the two spears finally broke away from Mo Bai's control and returned to his own hands. Netwaka staggered back a few steps and barely managed to stabilize his body. After receiving the impact just now, his face became even paler. Fortunately, the weapon was saved. For the magicians of Edolas, if they lose the magic tools as a medium, they will not be able to use powerful magic power at all. The 10 Commandments spear is still in his hand. At least it hasn't failed yet. Mo Bai, who was opposite him, naturally took all this in his eyes and couldn't help but secretly thought, "This woman is so cruel to me." Netwaka licked the blood flowing from the corner of his mouth, staring at Mo Bai with his eyes, his expression becoming more ferocious. As expected, he is the dragon slayer named by the king as the source of magical energy. However, countless fairies have fallen into my hands, and you will not be an exception. Holy Spear and Holy Stone Whirl. Netwaka used his arms to exert force and slowly reunited the 10-ring spear that had split into two halves. A bright light suddenly burst out from the tip of the spear, and a magical aura that was several times more terrifying than before slowly filled the air. Ouch! Feeling the coercion emanating from the Ten Commandments gun, even the flying beast beneath the two men let out a little wail from their throats. The strength shown by Netwaka at this moment is completely higher than that of Shujboy and others he encountered before. It's really rare for a woman to be able to be on par with Erza within Mo Bai's sight. Netwaka has already accumulated the magic power of the 10 Rings gun to its peak and is ready to attack at any time. Storm Dragon Wings. The wind blew under Mo Bai's feet. He stepped on the back of the beast and jumped into the air, spreading his wings with all his strength and flying into the sky again. When Netwaka saw this, he sneered, "Are you thinking of running away now? Can you escape the speed of the Holy Stone World?" As Netwaka shouted loudly, the bright light suddenly materialized into a silver-white wave column, aiming at Mo Bai's body, and shot upward at a very fast speed to kill. Mo Bai leaned over to take a bird's-eye view, and also felt the dangerous atmosphere under his feet. But he did not choose to dodge by linking the power of wind and thunder. As his wings flapped, a few wisps of breeze faintly surged around his body, stirring up some sand on the desert. Just before the energy beam of the Holy Stone World was about to hit, Mo Bai quickly adjusted his posture so that his whole body was downward, clenching his fists tightly, gather enough Earth attribute magic power to fight against it. Earth Dragon's Earth Hammer. In Edolas for so long, the most common terrain is the desert. In order to maintain sufficient magic power at all times, Mo Bai bit the bullet and ate a lot of sand. No way, although not very elegant. But at least the recovery of magic power is still visible to the naked eye. Mo Bai also accumulates some earth energy in his body that has not had time to be converted into magic power. It happened to be used in this attack. Mo Bai was condescending and used his fist to break through the bamboo to defeat Netwaka's final move. Netwaka gritted her teeth. She had already concentrated all her strength on this round of confrontation. Stay in Edolas. On the other hand, Mo Bai, with the blessing of the thick and tough earth dragon power, and the floating sand all over his body as a medium to attract magic power, is like a fish in water. Both fists were like a ferocious beast that was out of control and rushed forward recklessly. The light emitted by the Holy Stone World was scattered bit by bit. Almost realizing that the time to attack had arrived, Mo Bai gently opened his mouth and inhaled, sucking in all the sand particles that were originally wrapped around his side. Immediately, he concentrated it between his fists, and the magic power exploded again. At the beginning of the counterattack, the light of the 10-ring spear was instantly extinguished, and everything was covered by the powerful magical aura of the Earth Dragon. A look of endless horror suddenly poured into Netwaka's face. Boom! As her fists fell, Netwaka was heavily shot down together with the flying beast she was originally riding on, falling suddenly and uncontrollably. Wild sand was once again stirred up in the desert until the dust clears. The field of vision gradually became clearer, and I could clearly see the situation under my feet. Mo Bai then gradually restrained his original magic power and controlled the wings of the storm dragon to run downward. The blue beast had lost any breath of life, and its huge corpse lay like a low hill on the desert. As for Netwaka, although he was dying, he still held the weapon tightly in his hand. Mo Bai strolled forward, bent down, and with gentle force, grabbed the 10 Commandments spear into his hand. In order to prevent the impact from being too great, this weapon was damaged. In the attack just now, Mo Bai also deliberately avoided Netwaka's original position, and most of the attack power was hit on the beast. Putting the 10 Commandments spear in his hand and weighing it, Mo Bai smiled lightly and said, Consider this weapon my trophy. Mo Bai turned around and was about to leave. Out of the corner of his eye, he suddenly caught sight of Netwaka's face. Even though the sand on the ground was stained by the battle, it was still difficult to conceal the resentment in her eyes. Netwaka still stared at Mo Bai and said in a hoarse voice, "If I had known this, I would rather destroy the 10 rings gun than let you take it away." Mo Bai shrugged, picked up the 10 rings gun and waved it in front of Netwaka's eyes, and said helplessly, "Can you be gentler? Hey, my Erza is much better behaved than you at the same time." To the west of the royal city, Anima Control Center. In the command room, Captain Hughes, a big treehouse, suddenly parachuted out of nowhere outside the city, and a bunch of fairy tale wizards came out of it, clamoring to capture our place. They're just a bunch of unfashionable fish. You can handle this kind of thing on your own. You don't have to report it to me. But that group of goblins got a bunch of high-end magic items from nowhere. Each one has frighteningly powerful magic. The main entrance is about to be lost. What? Hughes immediately stood up in panic. Just half a day ago, as the captain of the 3rd Magic Warfare Unit of the Royal Army, he was ordered by the king to be transferred to the Anima Control Center together with Pantsa Lily, the captain of the 1st Magic Warfare Unit, to guard it. Originally, Hughes thought this would be a leisurely job. After all, according to the king's original plan, the next focus was to capture Mo Bai and activate the Dragon Lock Cannon. But he didn't realize something was wrong until a group of fairy tale magicians, led by Mr. Gang, came knocking on his door. "It's impossible. I clearly heard Jay say that Fairy Tale's magic power should have been exhausted. Didn't he fail to win that guild?" Hughes frowned. However, the other party's troops are approaching the city, and there is no time for him to think about these things now. After calming down, Hughes asked the guard who came to report the news, "How is Captain Lily doing? Is there any news about asking him for help?" Bang! Before the guard could respond, the door to the command center was forced open with a punch. Hughes looked in horror. Standing at the gate were Mr. Gang and Pantsa Lily, one person and one cat. The members of Fairy Tale followed closely behind the two, their faces filled with the excitement of fighting. Apparently, the previous attack on the Royal Army here made them take a bad breath. Hughes finally reacted. You, Lily, you actually betrayed the king?" Lily responded coldly. "The king is greedy and blindly plunders the magic power of other worlds. I have already decided to follow Prince Jalal." "You!" What else did Hughes want to say? Nabu, who was behind Mr. Gang, suddenly stepped forward and punched Hughes in the chest, knocking him away. "What nonsense are you talking to him? Didn't Brother Mo Bai say that our mission is to reverse Anima as soon as possible? Let's start now." Mr. Gang nodded slightly, also no longer hesitated, and led everyone towards the Anima main device behind the command room. Chapter 92 Big Black Rat. The royal city of Edolas is full of cars and horses. The bustling streets and the endless crowds of people seem to be the same as usual. In order to prevent the target from being too big to attract attention, Mo Bai had already landed from the air, slipped into a deep alley, and moved forward in secret. The breeze blows. At the end of the alley ahead, a subtle whisper reached Mo Bai's ears, making him stop and listen. "Sigh, I really don't know what the king is thinking. He has confiscated all the magic items from all of us and still wants to come here to guard us 24 hours a day. Should keep your voice down. It is said that the Aslant man named Mo Bai has extremely keen senses, but you can't be heard by him." I know. Isn't he not here? What's all the fuss about? Besides, our current weapons are just devices without magic power. Even if he comes, there is no way to catch him. It's better to be cautious anyway. Although the palace has not made a clear announcement, I feel that something big is going to happen today. What's the big deal? After a brief pause and hesitation, another person said in a lower voice, "When I patrolled the palace last time, I accidentally saw Prince Jalal. He seemed to be here for negotiation, and he also told the king something about Anima. Tell me more details?" I just remember that they were having a very unpleasant time. The king seemed to threaten Prince Jalal, and even wanted to use the forbidden art armored dragon knight that was sealed a few years ago. What the hell? Real or fake? Idiot! Keep your voice down. The sound stopped suddenly, Mo Bai hid his body in a dark corner, rubbed his chin, and thought to himself. These two idiots seem to have mentioned something very important. Mo Bai remembers it clearly. Mistigan said that the royal army was large in number and well-equipped. But now that it's so easy to sneak in, I originally thought it would be a trap, waiting for me to fall into a trap. Unexpectedly, the king was more ruthless. Just recycle all the magic items of those soldiers. Use the magic power as the energy source to activate the Dragon Knight's armor, and then use the power of the Dragon Knight to capture himself. During the activation of the Dragon Knight, soldiers were asked to stand guard continuously and monitor the movements in the city at all times. This plan is indeed quite thoughtful. It seems that we have to find where the king is as soon as possible and try to kill him before the Dragon Knight launches his attack. For fighting, Mo Bai always adheres to the safest style of play. Just like when he first fought against the 6 demon generals, even though he had the power to fight against guild leader Wu. But since there is a way to directly avoid a vicious battle and achieve victory, why not do it? Think of this. Mo Bai mobilized his magic power, instantly increased his body's speed to the maximum, and rushed forward out of the deep alley. At the entrance of the alley, the 2 guards who were fishing just now were preparing to pretend to be on guard. But he only felt a strange wind suddenly blowing in front of him, which seemed to be mixed with some magical energy. Something seemed to flash before my eyes, and it was fleeting. The 2 of them looked at each other, confused about each other's situation, and their faces were confused. It seemed like something rushed past just now. Didn't you see clearly? Maybe it's a big black mouse? Really? To the west of the royal city, Anima Control Center. Under the leadership of Mr. Gang and Lily, everyone went deeper step by step until they reached the room at the end. Push the door open and enter. There are several huge humanoid stone statues standing around Liuqiu. The stone statues focus their attention on the center of the room, which is the main control device of Anima. This is it. Mr. Gang took a deep breath and couldn't help but speed up his pace. The magicians also gathered around the light group in the room and carefully examined the Anima Core light group. Natsu asked curiously, "So, this thing has been sucking the magic power of Mo Bai's world?" Mistigan nodded. "Then what are you waiting for? Let's find a way to reverse this thing now. Let us take care of the outside and make sure not to let in any of the royal army," Lucy urged. After hearing this, Mr. Gang slowly placed his palm on the light group at the core of Anima. As a dazzling beam of light shot out, everyone felt the huge magic power from it. It is indeed a super device that has been used to convert magic power for several years. Even if it has been forcibly closed once before, the remaining energy within it cannot be underestimated. Just as everyone was about to turn around and guard the door, Mr. Gang suddenly stopped what he was doing and shouted softly to everyone on the spot, "Everyone, please wait a moment. What's wrong?" Once Anima is successfully reversed, there will be no more magic in the Edolas world. You still have to be mentally prepared. Why, mother-in-law? Didn't you say it before? We all agree. Mr. Gang turned his head again, looked at Lily next to him, and spoke calmly. "Lily, thank you for your help. If the plan succeeds, I hope you can take my body out of here. Also, the citizens of Edolas are also handed over to you." What? Lily didn't understand for a moment. Even the magicians from the Fairy Tale Guild also had question marks on their faces. Mr. Gang let out a long sigh and explained in a deep voice, "Allowing Edolas to completely lose its magic will definitely cause immeasurable losses to this country, and I am the initiator of this plan and a sinner. I can no longer face the people in this capacity. So, I hope you can kill me." Lily was stunned for a moment. How could I do this to you?" Mistigan shook his head decisively. "Things have come to this point. If everything goes well, Mo Bai can smash King Faust's Dragon Knight armor. After that, you can take my body directly to explain to the people and naturally become the new king of this country." Chapter 93, Decisive Battle with Dragon Knight. Absolutely not. Lily flatly refused. Although Mistigan has long been regarded as a rebel prince, and Lily is the captain of the first magic warfare unit of the Royal Army. But one person and one cat had formed an indissoluble bond many years ago, and they were considered life or death friends. There was no way Lily could do this. Mr. Gang sternly emphasized. We have no other choice. Everything we do is for our country. This, just when there was a dispute, Lysana suddenly leaned out from the fairy tale crowd and walked up to them. Can I ask a question? What's the problem? Lysana frowned slightly, and after thinking briefly, she said softly, if anima is successfully reversed, it will take away all the magic power in the world of Edolas. As a transcendent born with magic power, won't Lily also be forcibly sent to Aslant? Mr. Gang was immediately stunned. Thinking about it carefully, it seems that is indeed the case. Lily originally came from the flying cat kingdom of Extania and was born with magic power in her body. It was only because of some reasons that he was expelled from Sky Island as a fallen angel, and then he served in the Edolas Kingdom Army and became a cadre here. Lily also gradually understood, with an elusive light shining in her eyes. He also realized at this moment that with the reversal of anima, he and all his compatriots would be forced to leave here. Mystigan glanced at Lysana bitterly, and then glanced at the fairy tale people behind her. After a long while, he asked hoarsely, then what should we do now? The hesitation in Lysana's beautiful eyes flashed, and she immediately said, I think Brother Mo Bai should also consider this, but it's a pity that he is not here now. Just proceed as planned. Continue to reverse the anima, and Brother Mo Bai should be able to tell us what to do next. Lysana's tone contained unconditional trust in Mo Bai. After hearing this, Mr. Gang finally placed his palm on the anima center light group again and slowly activated it. I hope. Other side, Mo Bai rushed to the center of the royal city. But as the distance continued to approach, I felt more and more that a terrifying magical power was being gradually released. The source is right in front of the square in the center of the royal city. Mo Bai narrowed his eyes slightly and realized that the king had activated the dragon knight armor before him. A fierce battle is inevitable. There is no way to steal the chicken like President Wu did. What is supposed to come has come. The wings of the storm dragon appeared from behind, and Mo Bai was no longer hiding. He rushed across the block in one stride and sailed into the air. The streets are getting noisier. As we continued to move forward, we found that more and more people seemed to be hurriedly heading in the same direction as ourselves. Mo Bai also vaguely discerned a few clear and complete sentences. Have you heard? King Faust seems to be reactivating the Dragon Knight armor. It's over there in the square. What the hell? Hasn't that been classified as a forbidden technique a long time ago? I still remember the terrifying and destructive power of the Dragon Knight when he first appeared. I also remember that it was clearly stated at that time that it was strictly prohibited to use it again, except under special circumstances. What special situation? Has the country encountered any difficulties that must be solved by using Dragon Knights? I don't know. Let's go over there first and watch the excitement, but you have to stay away. I don't want to be trampled to death. Go over the last street. Mo Bai's eyes were as bright as a torch, looking straight ahead. The originally spacious square was now densely packed with people, surrounding the center of the square. In the center of all people, a silver-gray dragon-shaped armored monster that covers the sky and the sun has stood up, exuding huge magical pressure. As the red light appeared on the Dragon Knight's face, and the huge soles of his feet supported his whole body, the Dragon Knight swayed slightly, and an old voice came from inside. Citizens of Edolas, I am King Faust. I am currently in the body of the Dragon Knight. Please listen carefully to my next words. The people watching the melon were immediately interested and shouted in agreement around him. It is indeed the king. Actually activated the Dragon Knight again. It seems that something big is about to happen. King Faust's voice, amplified by the Dragon Knight, was deafening. Even Mo Bai, who was suspended in the air in the distance, could hear it clearly. The old voice came out from the Dragon Knight's body again. Citizens, Edolas has now slipped into Edolas, a bandit from another world. This bandit valued the anima device used by our country to collect magic. After negotiating with me to no avail, he actually wanted to forcefully destroy the anima and monopolize all the magic power we have cultivated through all these years of hard work. Everyone said, should we expel him from this land? The sound echoed in the square like a bell. The public's emotions were instantly ignited and they loudly supported. I agree with both hands and feet. Is there such a thing? FKM. That's right. Our magic power is already very scarce. If Anima hadn't been creating magic power, it would have been exhausted long ago. The corner of Mo Bai's mouth couldn't help but twitch. No wonder Faust could become the king. He really has two skills. Not only did he never say that the magic power of the Anima device was stolen from Aslant, he also distorted the facts in a few words and defined himself as a robber. He even used his status as king to directly incite people's emotions. What an old fox. Seeing the support of the blockbusters, Faust continued. Citizens, the robber is too powerful. I had no choice but to reopen the Dragon Knight's seal. But please don't worry, this robber is different from us. He is born with a source of magic in his body. As long as we can capture him, it will be enough to cover all the magic consumed by activating the Dragon Knight, and there will even be some left over for everyone. As soon as this statement came out, the crowd became even more excited. But no one noticed. The so-called robbers they called had already quietly landed from mid-air and sneaked into their side. Chapter 90. Have you ever seen a 40-meter-long sword? Mo Bai forcibly suppressed all the magical energy in his body back into his body. Disguising himself as a muggle who doesn't understand magic, he squeezed out of the crowd step by step and found his way to the front row. Anyway, the king has never seen him, and when Mo Bai finally arrived at the feet of the Dragon Knight and took a closer look, he realized how big this guy was. At best, my height could only barely reach its ankles. But the good news is that this thing seems to be made of iron from top to bottom. Citizens, in order to ensure your life safety, once the robbers appear in the square, please evacuate here immediately. Faust's voice still hovered overhead. The people in the square were also blushing and roared in agreement, vowing to bring the robbers he called to justice. Wait, that little flame in front? What are you doing? Among the crowd, an old man watching the show in the front row suddenly shouted. People around him looked in the direction of his finger. In sight, someone indeed crossed the Dragon Knight's warning range and walked forward step by step. Hey, don't go there. The Dragon Knight is very dangerous, and its magical pressure will directly cause your heart to stop. Danger, danger, come back quickly. Don't cause trouble to the king. But no matter how hard the people around you try to dissuade you, the man in front seemed to be deaf, but he still walked forward with determination. Forget it, stop shouting. He's probably deaf. Respect natural selection. After all, no one onlookers was willing to take the risk of pulling him back. Faust, who was in the Dragon Knight's body, obviously noticed the young man who had crossed the line, but he did not immediately stop the expulsion. He seemed to feel that this boundary crosser had an unusual aura about him, not like an ordinary citizen. The person who came was none other than Mo Bai, who had been observing for a long time. You, Faust was about to ask. Mo Bai suddenly raised his eyes. A strange light flashed in his eyes, and then he decisively opened the wings of the storm dragon and flew to the sky on the wind. The people who were watching the show were dumbfounded as they stared at Mo Bai flying in the wind in front of them. He can fly? Could it be that he is a transcendent? Are you stupid? The transcendent is a cat, but this person is obviously a human. But he can indeed fly. How to explain this? This involves a blind spot in my knowledge. Maybe it's the king of fighters? Do-Ki turns into wings. 6. In the sky at this moment, Mo Bai no longer needs to suppress the magical energy in his body, and the dragon-slaying pressure is released, no less than the Dragon Knight in front of him, until the height was even with his waist. Almost at the same moment, the iron dragon-slaying crystal in his body suddenly activated. Iron Dragon Sword, as Mo Bai's arms transformed into two dark swords. Faust finally woke up, and a sinister voice came from the armor. Are you Mo Bai, the Dragon Slayer wizard brought by the traitor? I didn't expect that before I had time to find you. You fell into the trap yourself first. Forget it. Don't waste the magic power of the Dragon Knight action anymore. Let you, an outsider, see the most powerful war weapon in the entire Edolas. Mo Bai naturally wouldn't argue with him at this time. The storm dragon wings on his back moved vigorously, driving the whole body to fly forward, and the iron dragon sword waved in the air. It instantly cut from the side of the Dragon Knight's body. The iron sword and the iron armor intertwined, making a harsh collision sound unique to metal. Mo Bai unknowingly stepped up his attack again. A long, eye-catching scar was cut out of the Dragon Knight's body. The cockpit inside the Dragon Knight's body suddenly started to spin. Faust felt the same. His eyes gradually became gloomy, and he pushed the joystick in front of him forward. Roar! The traumatized Dragon Knight let out a deafening roar, and the iron tail immediately twisted from behind and smashed down in the direction of Mo Bai with the force of a mountain. Mo Bai's vision suddenly became dim due to the shadow of the huge dragon's tail. Immediately, it exploded at an even more astonishing speed, and its body was like a golden thunderbolt, leaping directly upward from its original position and jumping to the roof of a residential building not far away. Boom! The dragon's tail hit the ground hard. Not only did it not hit Mo Bai, but it immediately opened a deep crack in the wide square, and the impact even affected many melon-eating people who had not had time to leave. Yao Shou, the Dragon Knight, is going crazy again. Oh my god. Run for your life. The Dragon Knight slowly turned his body around. The cold face reflected a scarlet light, indicating King Faust's anger and resentment towards Mo Bai. On the other hand, Mo Bai, at this moment, he seems to be chewing something in his mouth. In the previous attack on the Dragon Knight, Mo Bai scraped off a lot of iron material from its armor. In line with the principle of not wasting, it's natural to eat it. This feels different from ordinary iron. It seems that there is a lot of magic mixed in it. Maybe it was injected when making this big thing. Swallow the iron material. Mo Bai suddenly felt refreshed. His strength increased a bit, and the iron dragon sword transformed into his arms also exuded a stronger murderous aura. Besides, this big guy's speed seems to be quite average. While thinking, Faust had already pulled down the control lever again, and the Dragon Knight's claws ignited the blue magic power, and at the same time, it dropped back and forth with a weight of thousands of tons. Directly smashed the tall building where Mo Bai is located to pieces. Only this time, Mo Bai escaped in time again at the last moment, and also grabbed another handful of magical iron material from its armpit. I swallowed it hastily without having time to taste the taste. Magic power surged up again, and Mo Bai nodded with satisfaction as he watched his iron dragon swords grow a little. If we continue fighting at this pace, even if we don't eat up this fake iron dragon, after a while, when the magic power increases to a certain level, you can directly kill the opponent with a 40-meter-long sword. The same thing happened over and over again. Whenever Faust takes the initiative to attack, Mo Bai can always dodge flexibly by relying on the speed advantage of the wind and thunder linkage. By the way, you can scrape some iron from him to replenish your magic power. The scars on the Dragon Knight's body became more and more dense, but the energy accumulated in Mo Bai's body was even more than before the battle began. He has used all the devoured magic power to strengthen the Iron Dragon Sword. At this moment, the Iron Dragon Sword's cold light suddenly appeared, and its blade was as sharp as lightning, as if it could cut through everything. The low roar of the Dragon Knight surrounded my ears, mixed with the angry voice of King Faust. Boy, you succeeded in irritating me. Faust punched the bright red button in front of him. A strange light suddenly flashed in the Dragon Knight's eyes, and he immediately opened his huge mouth of the abyss. Purple magic power surged in his mouth, and a mysterious and terrifying power began to gather. As time goes by, a huge ball of destructive light gradually takes shape. The light ball exudes heart-stopping energy fluctuations, and the surrounding air is distorted, as if it will be torn apart by this powerful force at any time. Faust had already turned red. His eyes, full of anger, once again revealed his desire and greed for magic, and he shouted loudly, "As long as you stay in Edolas, all the magic consumed in this war will be regained." Mo Bai took a deep breath. He looked down at the Iron Dragon Sword in both arms that had already been strengthened to its peak, and smiled meaningfully. "Do you want my dragon-slaying power? It's best to weigh your own weight first." Chapter 95. The war is over. Dragon Broken Steel Blade. Close your eyes gently. As the four-colored dragon-slaying magic crystals in the consciousness space were activated at the same time, they glowed brightly. A magic circle suddenly appeared under Mo Bai's feet, and four kinds of magic beams, iron, fire, thunder, and wind, poured out from it and continuously wrapped around the armed body. The edge of the iron dragon sword is revealed, and the majestic dragon-slaying magic power is attached to it, ready to go. The secret of Dragon Slayer, Dragon Broken Steel Blade. At the moment when the destructive light ball accumulated by the Dragon Knight was shot out, Mo Bai's figure also shot out violently, wielding two 40-meter-long swords and dancing wildly in the air, slashing wildly. At this moment, although the magical mysteries he activated were mainly based on the power of the Iron Dragon, with the assistance of the magic power of wind and thunder, the speed was also astonishing, for kinds of magic powers are attached to the weapon. Despite the huge size of the light ball, Mo Bai can still handle it with ease and keep repeating the slashing action. I don't know how many times I waved it. The Dragon Knight was still spitting out magic power to maintain the movement of the light ball, but now it is gradually weakening. Faust suddenly felt bad. Oops, Animo was shut down by that traitor before, and he didn't have time to supply all the remaining magic power stored before. However, Mo Bai at this moment will not give him a chance to regret. Boom! The last sword fell. The destructive light ball, which was originally extremely energetic, was now cut into nothingness under the attack of multiple attribute magic powers. Mo Bai did not stop the attack. As his figure flew through the air, he opened his arms, supported by the wings of the storm dragon, and quickly stabbed the Dragon Knight in the heart. The Dragon Knight was forged with all the wisdom and magic power of our country. How could it be easily broken by you? Faust stretched out his trembling arms, trying to control the Dragon Knight to use his broad body to block further. But Mo Bai's galloping speed didn't slow down at all, and he collided in a straight line with a devastating force and directly penetrated the Dragon Knight's chest with a single blow. The cockpit was shaken again. Faust clicked a bunch of buttons in a panic, but to no avail. The Dragon Knight had lost control and balance under the heavy injuries and fell straight down. Boom! The sky was filled with dust. The Dragon Knight was like a huge lump of iron, paralyzed on the ground, with scattered iron parts falling everywhere. Completely scrapped. Mo Bai looked up. Kneeling at the feet of the Dragon Knight was an old man with a white beard and hair, and his clothes were quite luxurious. It was King Faust who tried every possible means to capture him alive. However, at this time, King Faust was no longer as greedy and crazy as before, and his body was still shaking uncontrollably, and he was still in shock. The tide is over. Mo Bai took a breath and murmured to himself, "It's finally over." Seeing a lot of iron parts scattered under my feet, I immediately bent down gently, picked up a piece of iron, and gnawed it like an apple. Chat to replenish your energy. And when Mo Bai lowered his head again, in his sight, a stone the size of a sandbag suddenly rolled over and landed at his feet. Mo Bai raised his eyebrows slightly and turned around. On the originally empty field, a little boy of about 7 or 8 years old stood standing. The child had a look of disgust on his face, and he was constantly collecting gravel and iron pieces on the ground, throwing them at Mo Bai with all his strength, and muttering in his mouth, "You dare to bully our king? I'll beat you to death, Mo Bai's face was covered with black lines. Whose naughty kid is this? The naughty boy saw Mo Bai discovering himself. Instead of running, he bent down on the spot and struggled to lift a bigger stone with both hands. He used all his strength and threw it towards Mo Bai's face. Mo Bai raised his left hand gently and immediately stretched out his palm to stop him. With a slight movement of magic power in the body, the hard stone was instantly shaken into powder and scattered in the wind. The naughty boy was dumbfounded, and then he realized he was afraid. He turned around and ran back, staggeringly. Mo Bai didn't tolerate him at all. The wind attribute dragon-slaying power is mobilized and gently accumulated into a ball of invisible magic power. Mo Bai waved his arm in the air and used this power to slap the naughty kid hard on the butt. Whoa dash! The naughty child was so painful that he cried out for his father and mother. Tears fell down his face, and he ran away from the square to find his parents. Maybe it was because the naughty child was crying too loudly, Or maybe the situation had become peaceful. The people who had originally gathered around the square to eat melon and watch a show slowly returned to the area at this moment, looking at the scene in front of them in shock. Dragon Knight was defeated. Even Edolas' strongest power can't defeat him. In other words, our magic power is destined to be taken away by him. What a robber! The surrounding curses reached my ears. Mo Bai was not polite, pointed at the pile of scrap metal turned into dragon knights behind him, and said angrily, "Ah, yes, it's me. What's wrong? Are you going to bite me?" But he was afraid of Mo Bai's terrifying strength. The melon eaters could only dare to get angry, but dare not speak out, and they retreated back unconsciously. It's getting late. Mo Bai raised his head and looked at the starry sky on the vast plateau, and faintly found a few rays of light flickering in it, constantly amplifying. It seems that it is still inhaling some of the magical atmosphere from the earth. Mo Bai immediately realized that this was the result of Mr. Gang. It seems that the reversal of anima is about to be completed. Chapter 96. Are you really taking her away? Far above the sky, under Mo Bai's gaze, a huge thing suddenly appeared and fell rapidly, like a meteorite from space. Its size also continued to expand in Mo Bai's sight. It crashed to the ground with a loud noise and landed on the back of the Dragon Knight's body. It turned out to be a huge and thick tree. Mo Bai has already identified, based on the outline, that this is the headquarters of the Edolas Fairy Tale Guild. As the door of the tree house opened, the people inside rushed out like a swarm and swarmed in front of Mo Bai. The leaders are none other than Mr. Gang and Pencil Lily. Looking at the scrap Dragon Knight armor next to him, Mr. Gang looked shocked and spoke awkwardly. "You really did it." Mo Bai extended his right hand in a friendly manner and said softly, "Thank you for your honor. Since you can also come here, it will go smoothly to reverse Anima's plan, right?" Mr. Gang nodded slightly. "Thanks to everyone in the guild. They used the weapons you can use to defeat many, and they took down the control center with almost no effort." Natsu followed behind him and echoed, "Yes, little brother Mo Bai, this battle was so enjoyable." Yes. Mo Bai smiled and said nothing. At the same time, the giant Dragon Knight armor next to him suddenly flashed with a ray of light, shooting straight into the sky. And in the light, everyone could clearly feel the passing magic. Mo Bai rubbed his chin and analyzed in a deep voice. "Anima should be at work. It won't be long before everyone and everything related to magic, including us, will be forcibly sent to a slant." When Lily heard this, she suddenly thought of something and said hurriedly, "Now I need to go to Extania to inform the compatriots there about the news." "I'm sorry, everyone. The citizens of Extania are transcendents, and unlike Edolas, they are all flying cats born with magical powers within their bodies. Once anima is reversed, as Lysana reminded her before, all transcendents will be forcibly sent away." Watching Lily leave, Mo Bai quickly glanced at Mr. Gang in front of him, patted his shoulder affectionately, and said with a smile, "I should leave in a while, but I believe you will be a good king." An unexpected light flashed in Mr. Gang's eyes, and he said, "Wait, you mean?" Mo Bai smiled and added, "Lily is gone, the old king has failed, aren't you the only one left? Don't forget, you are the prince of this country. The magic of Edolas is gone. So many citizens will definitely have to endure a very painful time. Only you can stand up and turn the tide." Seeing Mo Bai's half-joking, half-serious expression, Mist Gang couldn't help but smile bitterly. "Okay, I have to take on this responsibility. You are welcome to come to Edolas again in the future." Mo Bai rolled his eyes when he heard this. Reminds me of the scene where I was stoned by a naughty kid. However, recalling that he had promised Lysana that he would occasionally bring her to visit relatives in Edolas, Mo Bai still asked, "By the way, what is the principle of your teleportation magic? How to learn it?" Mr. Gang explained, "Teleportation magic has been recorded in many classics. It is easy to use, but it is too time-consuming and laborious to build a teleportation base. To put it in a layman's terms, Mo Bai suddenly felt like a scumbag and wanted to sleep. If you only travel between Edolas and a slant, it's actually very simple. I have already set up the teleportation base points of the two worlds. You can go back and buy a magic book. You can learn it by simply reading it. Oh, time is limited. Seeing that the light of Anima's reversal was about to come to him, Mo Bai did not discuss it further with Mr. Gang. As long as Lisana can be brought back to visit relatives, the goal will be achieved, but the principles should be left to those who specialize in magic. By the way, I have something else to tell you. Mo Bai suddenly turned around and said. Mistigan was puzzled. What's the matter? Mo Bai smiled faintly. In the future, you will be the king here. I'm afraid you will never have the chance to return to Aslant. However, in our guild, you will never be Prince Jalal, but Mist Gang. So, I hope you can always remember the 3 rules for quitting the guild. First, information that is detrimental to Fairy Tail must not be discussed with others for the rest of your life. Second, it is prohibited to contact past clients without authorization and then obtain personal benefits from them. Speaking of this, Mo Bai's voice suddenly became choked. As I get older, crocodile is always easy to get in my eyes. However, he paused for a moment and continued speaking. Third, even if the path is different, you must live strong. You must not despise your own life, and never forget your cherished companions in the past. Maybe it's because of my mission since childhood. Mistigan has always been a serious person. But when Mo Bai finished his last sentence, the corners of his mouth gradually curved, and he punched Mo Bai in the chest. You guy. Except for Mo Bai. The light of the anima also fell on Lisana. Everyone at Fairy Tail was almost shocked. Lisana, you? Lisana bowed apologetically and said politely, I'm sorry for hiding it from everyone for so long. Actually, like brother Mo Bai, I'm from Aslant. After the words fell, Lisana immediately turned to Mira Jane and Elfman. They are the ones who are about to leave, and they are the ones who are most reluctant to leave. Sister Mira, brother Elfman, I'm sorry. Mira Jane had tears in her eyes and hugged Lisana tightly. Actually, I have known for a long time that you are not that child. She left us forever during that commission. But you were so similar. Mira Jane finished speaking. He took out a square sachet bag engraved with the Fairy Tail coat of arms from his arms, stuffed it into Lisana's hand, and held it tightly. This is a very precious amulet, a relic left by Lisana of Edolas. If you encounter danger, just inject magic into it, and the nearest guild members will sense it and go to help you. It's just a pity that my sister didn't have the chance to use it until the last moment of her life. You put it away, maybe it can be used at critical moments in the future. Lisana couldn't stop her tears from falling. Sister Mira, Elfman was also crying beside him. As for making it so sad, when several people are sad, Mo Bai's voice suddenly came from in front of him. Lisana bit her red lips with her teeth. A hint of gentleness flashed in her beautiful eyes. Mo Bai walked forward in 3 steps and brushed away the tears on Lisana's cheek with his hands, saying, Didn't I tell you? You can come back anytime you want. I'll take care of the teleportation magic. Lisana lowered her head in embarrassment and squeezed the sachet in her hand. Well, even though this is the case, I still can't help it. Mo Bai smiled helplessly, raised his hands to the magicians of the guild and said, Lisana and I are going back to Aslant soon. Please take care of yourself. I'm glad to meet you in this world. Separation is at hand. Everyone was really reluctant to give up. Are you really leaving? Mo Bai joked. Isn't that what you said last time? I defeated Jace and randomly selected a beautiful woman from the guild to take away. Well, that seems to be the case. The dome finally shone a brilliant light. It descended on the bodies of Mo Bai and Lisana, slowly attracting them to the sky. Finally, it was time to say goodbye. At the feet of Mo Bai and Lisana, dozens of pairs of arms waved to say goodbye to them. Everyone, even without magic, I hope you will not forget your bonds and build Fairy Tail into a forever home. Chapter 97b, My Cat Midair. Mo Bai gently held Lisana's right wrist, causing her to blush immediately. Brother Mo Bai smiled lightly and explained, I will travel through Anima and return to Aslant in a while. If it falls from the sky, I'm afraid you will fall. A trace of imperceptible loss quickly flashed in Lisana's beautiful eyes, getting further and further away from the ground. In the blink of an eye, the space-time vortex of Anima is already in front of you. Lisana began to long for what she would be like when she returned home, feeling even more timid about being close to home. We can return to Magnolia in a while. I wonder what changes have taken place in the guild in the past few years. How are Mira Jane and the others? There was nothingness before his eyes, and his body was wrapped in a whirlpool of magic power. When Mo Bai and Lee Senna opened their eyes again, a new world had already changed under their feet. They were just above Magnolia. "We're almost home," Mo Bai murmured. "Although I only stayed in Edolas for 2 days, when I returned to Magnolia, I felt like I was in another world." As if he suddenly remembered something, Mo Bai said softly to Lee Senna, "We have returned to Aslant. Do you want to try and see if the magic is restored?" Lee Senna nodded slightly, trying to activate the magic power in her body. After staying in Edolas for a long time, it was inevitable that she would become unfamiliar with the control of magic power. But after about half a minute, Mo Bai felt the magic power flowing out of her body. "Receive an animal soul," as the purple magic circle appeared on the body. When the light dissipated, Lysana's original short white hair had been transformed into long curly hair, and her cat ears and tail also appeared. Meow, a total kitty girl. Mo Bai couldn't help but take a second look, but Xiao Juju thought in his heart, "Speaking of which, it seems that dragon slayers all have cats." Natsu has Happy, Winnie has Carla, Cobra has Cabrios, even Laxus is freed. As for Gajeel, if there is fate, he will still meet Lily, right? Maybe I should get a cat too. Think of this. Mo Bai paused and said in a deep voice, "Lee Senna, what's wrong? Will you be my cat?" Ah? A shy blush suddenly appeared on Lysana's face, like the morning glow that had just appeared on the horizon, quietly staining her face. Control the wings of the storm dragon to land slowly. Finally, we stopped in front of the long-lost Fairy Tale Guild's main entrance. Lee Senna couldn't help but feel a little dazed. "I didn't expect that the guild would change so much in the past few years since I left," Mo Bai explained. "We had a war with the Phantom Lord Guild before, and the original guild building was completely destroyed. The current house has been renovated and expanded much more than before. Let's go? Go in and take a look." The words fell, and Mo Bai raised his leg and kicked the door open. "I'm back." What came into view was still the noisy crowd in the hall. People smoking, drinking, having sex, and running around with their buttocks bare. Everything you need. And when the door was pushed open, everyone's eyes focused on it. But he couldn't move away for a long time. "Natsu, give me your pants back." Gray yelled and was about to stretch out his arms to catch Natsu, but Natsu's eyes glanced at the door, and his body seemed to be frozen, and he froze in place. Gray got the pants easily and was a little confused for a moment. "Hey, why don't you run away? You're not usually like this." Sensing Natsu's strange gaze, Gray also looked in its direction and was also stunned on the spot. For a moment, the originally noisy guild fell silent and stared blankly ahead. Mo Bai smiled softly, took Lysana's arm, and walked forward slowly, loudly announcing again, "We are back." Perhaps due to the increased volume, everyone finally recovered from the silence and stared blankly at the white-haired girl next to Mo Bai. "Are you Lee Senna?" Lee Senna smiled and bowed deeply to everyone. "Long time no see." Everyone in front of the counter, Mira Jane and the other two, who were still helping Elfman register the entrustment, had already burst into tears when they saw the girl's face that had haunted them countless days and nights. "Lee Senna, Sister Mira, Brother Elfman, long time no see." Just like when I was a child, the three sisters, who had been separated for a long time, finally embraced each other again. They had been waiting for this charge for several years. Mira Jane wiped away her tears, and a forced smile gradually appeared on her face. "I really hope I'm not dreaming." "Of course it's not a dream," Lee Senna responded softly. "Silly girl, where have you been these past few years?" "It's a long story, Sister Mira, but thanks to Brother Mo Bai, I was able to come back smoothly." Mira Jane then looked at Mo Bai, who had returned with him. His pale face was full of gratitude, and he bowed deeply to thank him. "Thank you, Mo Bai." Mo Bai waved his hands as if nothing had happened and said with a slight smile, "Have you forgotten? Didn't I tell you before when we were in Gluck Village? Lee Senna just went to another world." Mira Jane then remembered the original scene. Originally, I thought Mo Bai was just comforting himself at that time, but unexpectedly, what he said was indeed the truth. Gray next to him couldn't help but ask, "By the way, where have you been these days?" Mo Bai tilted his head and frowned slightly. "How should I put it? You can understand that I went to a space similar to a parallel universe called Edolas. To explain it in detail, we have to start with Miss Gang." Everyone's curiosity was suddenly aroused. "Miss Gang?" Mo Bai nodded slightly. "Well, after my fight with Guildarts that day, he took the initiative to find me. Chapter 98, I choose Mo Bai. He is the one everyone hopes for." Recalling the scene when Mist Gun first found him, Mo Bai told everyone about all his experiences in Edolas, with Lee Santa supplementing on the side. "So, after I was seriously injured, I just happened to be transported to other worlds by the small Animus system and did not die. And in Edolas, everyone in the Fairy Tale Guild is also very nice to me. It's like another home." Mira Jane and Elfman suddenly realized. No wonder Lysana's body gradually disappeared at that time. "So, Mystigan is the king now? He will never come back again?" Mo Bai nodded bitterly. "No matter what, the guild has lost an S-class mage partner in a sense." Makarov took a sip of the hot tea in the cup and acted as if nothing had happened. "Don't worry. With that guy's ability, he will definitely manage the kingdom well now." Natsu finally couldn't hold back anymore and rushed to Mo Bai and asked impatiently, "I heard that there is another me in that world. What is he like?" As soon as Natsu said this, the people next to him immediately came forward. And me, Mo Bai had no choice but to say, "Don't worry, ask one by one." "Natsu Edolas, you are a crybaby. You can only calm down a little when you ride on the magic motorcycle." "Nanny!" "Gray, not only did you not take off your clothes over there, you wore them so thickly that you wanted to wrap yourself into a ball every day. WTF? You put on your pants first before you talk. I almost forgot you were Juvia's follower over there, sticking behind her every day. Bushkaman." "Lucy, Levy, you're almost the other way around. You fight every day over there in Edolas, just like Natsu and Gray here." Until these questions are answered one by one, Makarov walked up to Mo Bai with a smile again and asked softly, "Mo Bai, since there is another one in Edolas, have you seen me on the other side? President, you are the king?" "Haha, as expected, my old man is still very powerful." Beat the crowd. Mo Bai finally saw the familiar crimson silhouette not far away. It was Erza. Erza smiled sweetly, gently held Mo Bai's arm, and whispered, "I hope you come back safely." "Of course. By the way, I brought you some gifts when I came back this time." "Gift?" Mo Bai then took off the Ten Commandments gun that had been on his back and untied the bandages wrapped around it. It was what he had captured from Netwaka earlier. "This weapon is called the Ten-Ring Spear. It's another weapon you use from Edolas. It's a pity that since it crossed the world, most of the magic power in it has been lost. If you have a chance, you can try to use your own magic power to warm it up. Maybe it will come in handy one day." Taking the Ten Commandments spear, Erza put it in her hand and looked at it carefully for a while. After a long while, he looked at Mo Bai gently again. "Thank you, I like this gift very much." When Mo Bai was about to wave his hand and say it was nothing, Erza immediately changed the topic. "As a gift in return, tonight," a rare sly smile appeared on Erza's face. "Gently pull Mo Bai in front of you, lift his chin with your fingers, bite his ear, and whisper the second half of the sentence." Mo Bai's ears suddenly turned red and warm at a speed visible to the naked eye. He nodded unnaturally and said, No problem. Then I'll get ready tonight." A few days later, Edolas. Although there was no magic to support them, under the leadership of the new King Jalal, the people quickly adapted to such a life. They devoted themselves to labor one after another and vowed to rebuild a prosperous and powerful country. A prosperous and peaceful scene. Everyone in Fairy Tale has also waited for the cancellation of their wanted order, and they have finally become a legal guild. But at this moment, there are some problems within the guild. In the treehouse, everyone gathered around the round table in the center of the hall, staring at the guild information registration form issued by the king himself. All other information is fine. There's only the president column. "Hey Lucy, why are you the guild president?" Mira is usually responsible for all matters of the guild. Why? With my fists? Do you want to fight? It seems Levy is right. You are really just a gorilla woman with strong limbs and a simple mind. How dare you say it again? Hey, actually, I think Jivia-chan is more suitable to be the president. Why don't you let me do it? I promise to take into account everyone's opinions. While everyone was arguing endlessly among the crowd, someone suddenly shouted, "It would be great if Brother Mo Bai is still here." It suddenly became quiet. After a long time, everyone looked at each other in confusion, and their thoughts coincided with each other. Lucy confidently picked up the pen next to her and registered a brief name in the president column. Mo Bai. Then it's decided. Mo Bai will be the president. While the president is away from us, everyone could just go about their business as usual. One day, he will come back here from a slant to visit us. A slant. Early morning. We are back. Following a feeble greeting, the guild door was slowly opened. 6 people and 2 cats, including Mo Bai, slowly walked into the hall with heavy dark circles under their eyes, expressions of despair. As soon as he walked in the door, Gray immediately stripped off his naked body, lay down in front of the table, and complained. I had to catch some monster that only moved at night. I stayed up all night for 3 whole nights. I was so sleepy. Fire Dragon Soul Dan. Next time you dare to represent the team to accept such a commission from the underworld without authorization, I will... The words are not finished yet. Gray has gone to find Duke Zhou. In the past, Natsu would have definitely argued with Gray, but now his upper and lower eyelids were also fighting like crazy. Too lazy to say another word, I just lay down next to him. 5 seconds later, there was the sound of snoring one after another. Well, only Mo Bai and Erza could barely hold on, dragging their tired bodies forward step by step, until arriving at the front desk. Only then did he realize that Mira Jane was not present, and the waiter today was a little girl with short purple hair. Kinana. Kinana is the big snake Caberios that Mo Bai picked up earlier, Cobra's loyal partner. After finding Granny Porliusica to lift the curse, she lost her memory and stayed in Fairy Tale. Kinana smiled and said enthusiastically, Sister Mira has taken Lee Santa out to do some commissioning. Little Mina has been left to the president to take care of. I will take over the front desk duties. I see. Mo Bai yawned and handed back the task list with the client's signature to Kinana. Indicates that the commission has been successfully completed. Erza showed a tired smile to Mo Bai and said, Everyone has been tired recently, so take a good rest. Wendy and Lucy are also going back to the girls' apartment first. Mo Bai nodded. Okay. And before turning around and leaving the guild, Mo Bai subconsciously asked Kinana, Where did Mira and the others go to carry out the commission? Kinana tilted her head, thought for a while, and said, It seems it's called the Haze Forest? Hazy Forest, did they go there too? Chapter 99, The Female Drunkard at Home. Yawn. Mo Bai left the guild and flew to the outskirts of Magnolia. He hadn't slept well for several days, so he went back to catch up on his sleep. Fold your wings. Standing in front of a familiar villa, Mo Bai was about to open the door and enter the house, but was shocked by the scene in front of him. In front of the front door of his house, there is a drunk female alcoholic curled up at the moment. The drunkard smelled strongly of alcohol, his hair was messy, and his face had an unnatural blush. His eyes were closed tightly, and his brows were slightly wrinkled, as if he was troubled by something in his sleep. Although her face was covered, Mo Bai could still immediately identify her based on her hot and sexy dressing habits and the coat of arms on her waist. Kana? Why are you so drunk so early in the morning? Hearing the call, Kana squinted his eyes dimly and opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something. Mo Bai leaned down gently, grabbed her arm, and tried to lift her up. But the next second, he regretted it. Wow! At the moment Mo Bai was about to help her up, Kana suddenly opened his mouth wide and immediately started his hand at 0 frame, spitting out a large puddle of filth. Mo Bai is ashamed. If I hadn't reacted quickly and turned my body sideways in time, I might have been sprayed all over. Kana still made a faint sound in her throat. Whine. Mo Bai was so angry that she really wanted to slap the big thunder on her chest. Are you still drinking when you are almost dead? Seeing Kana's consciousness gradually blurring again, Mo Bai sighed and looked around. Although the folk customs in the town are simple, There is almost no such thing as picking up corpses. But after all, this is the countryside. If a Vulcan ape or something comes out nearby, it's still not safe. Oh, I'm so convinced. Why did you just faint at the door of my house? And Mo Bai shook his head helplessly, put Kana's arm on his shoulders again, and helped her into the house. Finally, he dragged her to the bed in the bedroom. Looking at the sleeping Kana, Mo Bai sighed, covered her with the quilt, turned around, and walked out of the room. I seem to know why she got so drunk in broad daylight. Speaking of which, since the last time Uncle G came back from a century-old mission, the guild has never seen Uncle G and Kana appear on the same screen. They probably avoided it deliberately. Lying on the sofa in the living room, Mo Bai gently closed his eyes and recalled the past stories. Kana's mother died early, and she spent most of her childhood in loneliness without company. It wasn't until he grew older that he took the clues left by his mother to find his father, and soon arrived at the Fairy Tale Guild. When Kana first came here, neither Natsu Gray nor Erza had appeared yet. It can be said that among all the young magicians of this generation, she is the oldest one. Since joining the guild, Kana has been keeping the secret in her heart until one day she actually meets the father she was looking for in the guild. The man who is related to her by blood is named Gildas. But at that time, Gildarts had no idea that she was a daughter, and he only thought that she was a kid who had just joined the guild. After that, Kana tried to express her feelings to him countless times and tell the truth, but failed again and again. Gildart's status in the guild was too high, and he was loved by everyone. Kana even had a low self-esteem and felt that her magical talent was not enough to become his daughter. Soon came the annual S-Class Magician Assessment. Kana began to work hard to practice card magic, and secretly set a goal in his heart. As long as he becomes an S-Class mage, he will have the qualifications and courage to go to Gildarts and tell him the true relationship between the two. However, seeing that Mira Jane, Erza, and others who came from behind all passed the assessment, he was still standing still. To this day, many years later, this incident remains a secret in Kana's heart. Thinking of this, perhaps due to the exhaustion of the past few days, Mo Bai gradually fell asleep. Perhaps it is precisely because of Uncle G's recent return and the S-Class Wizard examination that is about to begin that makes Kana depressed and drunk. After all, we are partners in the same guild, and Uncle G treats me well. After I wake up, it seems I have to give Kana some good advice. Mo Bai didn't sleep deeply. A few hours later, hearing a slight sound, Mo Bai opened his eyes and turned his head to look to the side of the living room. Kana also woke up and walked out of the room awkwardly, looking quite confused. Mo Bai originally planned to ask about her situation, but Kana spoke first, and the first sentence he said completely stunned him. "I'm a little dizzy. Do you have any wine? I'll bring it through." Mo Bai has a black line on his head. At this time, shouldn't normal people ask themselves why they are here? He is indeed a drunkard. Seeing that Mo Bai remained silent, Kana had a look of disappointment on his face and said, "Although I don't remember what you did to me when you were drunk, thank you for taking care of me. You didn't cause any trouble." Mo Bai felt bitter in his heart. Well, why do I hear the first half of this sentence so awkward? Kana turned around and staggered towards the door of the villa. At this time, Mo Bai finally sighed and shouted, "You drank like this so early in the morning. Are you worried about something?" Kana's footsteps gradually stopped, although she didn't walk out of the door. But he hesitated and did not answer Mo Bai's question directly. There was silence for a few seconds. Mo Bai's eyes suddenly lit up, and he said immediately, "By the way, just stand there and don't move. It's on the second floor of the cabinet on your right. Open the cabinet door. I remember there is an unfinished bottle of wine inside." Mo Bai is not worried about her physical condition. Magicians have a special physique, and their body organs are protected by magic power, so they rarely get sick. If you smoke as hard as Wakaba, you don't have to worry about getting lung cancer. As expected by Mo Bai, Kana became interested again as soon as he heard that there was wine. There was a sound of rummaging. Kana could see the wine bottle placed at the deepest part of the cabinet at a glance, with most of the liquid inside still retained. As for the missing part, it involves the night when Mo Bai and Erza were together. Chapter 100. How did this group of fishermen unite the world? Tons. After removing the cork, Kana aimed at the mouth of the bottle, raised his head, and drank it all in one gulp. The cheeks that had almost returned to normal color after resting were now lightly flushed again. And Mo Bai leaned on the sofa and said helplessly, "Okay, have you drunk now? Do you want to share your troubles with me?" Hesitated for a long time, Kana finally felt reassured in her heart, walked to Mo Bai, sat down slowly and said, "Actually, I'm different from everyone else. I came to the guild to find my father. His name is Gildarts." Although Mo Bai already knew about her past, but I still chose to listen patiently to Kana's story. I think that only after becoming an S-class mage can you be truly qualified to be his daughter. But just last night, I overheard the president and others discussing the next S-level assessment. There is only one place that can pass the assessment this year, and they all thought it would be you. And Mo Bai couldn't help but feel ashamed. "Why are you related to me again?" After she finished speaking, Mo Bai immediately analyzed. Ahem, Kana. Actually, there shouldn't be any necessary connection between whether or not you want to be an S-class mage and your acquaintance with Uncle G, right? How? Kana's reaction was extremely violent, and he retorted, "Because his status in the guild is too high. As her daughter, I have not been able to reach even half of his height after joining the guild for so long." Mo Bai rolled his eyes, spread his hands, and said, "Isn't this nonsense? Even if you don't know any magic, you still can't change the fact that you are father and daughter." Kana wanted to say something more, but Mo Bai sighed, curled his lips, and laughed at himself. "Actually, I'm quite envious of you. At least you know that Uncle G is your father. But what about me? I'm almost 20, and I still don't know what my parents look like." Kana's eyes suddenly widened. "Is this you?" Mo Bai had a bitter look on his face, nodded reluctantly, and said helplessly, "Yes, I came out of the orphanage." But luckily, Mo Bai did not encounter any setbacks while growing up. Mentally pretty healthy before he was reincarnated here, although he was not as good as the gold medal lawyer Zhang Yida in material terms, he was still living a well-off life. Mo Bai stood up, poured a glass of warm water, and handed it to Kana, and said gently, "If I were you, I would have confessed to Uncle G on the first day I came to the guild. I believe Uncle G just doesn't know you exist. As long as he knows that he has a daughter, no matter if she is an S-class magician or not, he will definitely search for her at all costs, right?" Kana is still undecided. But, although Kildas usually has no heirs, but every time Kana saw him, the truth would get stuck in her throat due to excessive nervousness. Mo Bai recalled the scene in the morning when he and other members of the team returned to Magnolia and suggested, "How about this? I saw Uncle G went out with fishing gear this morning. He is probably still fishing now. I'll accompany you to the wilds to find him later. Let's make it clear to him now." Before Kana could respond, Mo Bai immediately added, "Also, don't expect me to hold back or let anything go during the assessment. If you are still planning to become an S-class mage before confessing, then I can't help you." Mo Bai uses both soft and hard tactics. Kana's eyes suddenly showed confusion, and she almost bit her lip to bleed. There was a silent storm inside. A long while, when she slowly stood up and looked at Mo Bai, the timidity in her eyes had disappeared a lot, and there was more determination, and a little hope and worry. "Let's go." Seeing Kana make a decision, Mo Bai also smiled. After all, so much time was not wasted. Mo Bai still remembers that Gildas was walking towards the outskirts of Magnolia in the early morning, carrying fishing gear in his hand. At that time, Gildas also invited them to go fishing together. But they were too sleepy, so they politely refused. It's already afternoon, but according to Mo Bai's estimation, Gildas should still be there. Turn on the Storm Dragon wings and bring Kana over. It won't take too long. Mid-air, Kana was held by Mo Bai's wrist and said coyly, "I am still a little nervous." Mo Bai was speechless for a while. "We've come this far. Why don't you back down now?" Her expression was still unnatural. Mo Bai simply released his right hand gently, and as his wrist slid down, Kana's body sank from the air in an instant. Kana's heart suddenly pounded, and she almost thought she was about to fall. After all, we are at an altitude of tens of meters at the moment. If we fall, we will probably be shattered to pieces. Fortunately, Mo Bai grasped her wrist again in the next second and stopped falling. Kana came back to her senses and couldn't help asking, "Hey, What are you doing? To cheer you up, Mo Bai said nonchalantly. The natural scenery outside Magnolia is particularly beautiful. Along the clear river, Mo Bai soon saw an unkempt fishing uncle in the distance. It's Gildarts, Mo Bai reminded. Control your emotions. We will land soon. Ah, so fast. As soon as he finished speaking, the light of the storm dragon's wings reappeared, and Mo Bai's body dived downward towards Gildart's position. The landing place was just a dozen steps to his side. At this moment, Gildas was still wearing the tattered black cloak, but his eyes were fixed on the floating fish float, concentrating on it. But when Kana saw him like this, the tension in his heart still didn't ease at all. He unconsciously shrank his body behind Mo Bai. Mo Bai had a bitter look on his face and whispered, "You don't want to say this yourself? What's the point of hiding behind me? How about you call him for me? I'll tell him what happens next." "All right," Mo Bai reluctantly agreed, walking up to Gildas step by step, and was about to talk. "Uncle G." Shadash Gildas didn't even turn his head to take a look and immediately put his index finger on his lips to signal silence. His eyes were still focused on the fish float floating slightly up and down, and he slowly grasped one end of the fishing rod with his right hand. "Yes." After a few seconds, a flash of excitement suddenly flashed in Gildas's eyes, and the hand holding the fishing rod suddenly raised. Under the traction of the fishing line, the golden fishhook draws a beautiful arc from the sky with drops of water, shining in the sunshine. This superb operation showed off Mo Bai's face. There is no flaw except that there is no fish on the hook. "Cut." Gildas snorted disdainfully from his nose, turned his head unhappily, and looked lazily at Mo Bai. "I called you this morning and you didn't come? It's better now, because when you come you will scare away all my fish. Is there a possibility that you couldn't catch it in the first place?" Mo Bai rolled his eyes and secretly wondered why these fishing guys all have the same moral character. As long as you talk to them, they will immediately feel that there is movement in their fish float, and then they will miss a big fish weighing 100 pounds because they ignore you. After Mo Bai finished speaking, he glanced into the bucket next to Gildas holding the fish. As he expected, it was empty inside. Sensing Mo Bai's contemptuous gaze, Gildas suddenly acted like a child who had discovered a secret. His face turned red. He hurriedly hid the bucket behind his back and shouted, "What are you looking at? I caught a big fish in the morning, but I grilled it and ate it at noon. What about the fish bones? It's so delicious that I even ate all the fish bones. You know, my barbecue is really good."
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.